Call the meeting to order. Clerk Boudreaux, can you please call the roll?
Present.
Present.
Councilmember Sweet.
Present.
Councilmember Tuesday.
Present.
Councilmember Simmons.
Here.
Councilmember McLean.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Present.
Everyone is present.
Thank you. Please rise as you're able for a moment of silence in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, indivisible. I'll entertain a motion for agenda approval.
Moved.
Been moved and supported. Any updates or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. This is our first opportunity for public comment. Members of the audience will have 3 minutes to address council. I will start with those who signed up on the sheet that's left at the door. When you approach the podium, please say your name and address for the record, if you feel so comfortable to do so. And then I will move to members of the audience who raise their hands and then members on Zoom. All righty, thank you. First, I have Ray Smith. Good evening.
My vision's kind of okay. My name is Ray Smith. I live in Ypsi Township. I work in Ypsilanti. I do landlord work for multiple owners. I came here to talk about the Housing Bill 1435, where we were talking about removing background checks for people. I wanted to bring up, why can't we have transitional housing brought on by like Avalon Housing or work with some type of charity so that we can get people a transitional period. So then once they transition, it could be something where they work with local landlords to bring them in. Government housing has standards that, like, for instance, with Section 8 or rapid rehousing or those government programs, those programs require background checks. So it sounds very crazy to me that we would have a situation where private landlords would be held or have a lower standard that we have to hit versus Section 8, where we are forced to do background checks. There was comments at the last HRC meeting about people coming out and having issues getting jobs. I would ask that, why is Ypsi City not kind of working with getting some remedial tasks for these people? I know that there's job openings, trash or landscaping. This is something that these people could have so that even if they don't have housing, they could still have work and, be able to be productive members of society. And then one of the other things was HRC admitted that this ordinance was poorly written, but it was still almost voted on within this governing body. And I'm wondering, is there going to be anything in the future that stops us from, voting on ordinances that may not even be properly worded? I believe Mr. McLean had brought up questioning whether arsonist or things of that sort, and they couldn't answer that question. So it's just something that, before we make rules and laws that affect the community, I think we should have them very clearly defined of what we want to do. And again, it's something where I don't believe that this is being talked about in this city council meeting. But I do remember the city attorney said, quote, to put it to bed. So it's a situation where I'm really hoping that we can kind of put this in our past. And again, I've rented out to people with felonies. I just want to know what I'm getting into. And I think that's a fair thing, especially for my safety, my staff's safety, and the contractors that I use, that I'd be allowed to know who I'm renting out to. So that's it.
Thank you. Next we have Christian Usera. Did I say that correctly? Oh, thank you. All right. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Christina Sarah. I live in Ypsilanti Township, but I work in the city of Ypsi. And I wanted to also talk about HRC's bill, mainly as it pertains to insurance, because I've worked in insurance in homeowners insurance, auto, and also in title. And basically, anytime there's a change in the hazards that could affect a certain property, it's going to increase the insurance rate. I actually talked with one of my other friends who was in the insurance industry, and I said, okay, are you going to need an umbrella policy for this? And he said, well, it's not going to be an umbrella policy, but you are going to need a separate endorsement for it, which is agents speak for more money, basically. It's a situation where if you don't actually talk with your insurance agent about it, they may not cover it. And also, if you don't tell your insurance agent about it, perhaps they won't cover it in that sense either. It's something that you need to get other supplemental coverage, and also your insurance agent needs to be aware of the changes of your hazards in order to make sure you have enough coverage for your building, to defend against any potential lawsuit that could arise from an individual moving into a structure. So I know it's one of the more, how do I put it, mundane parts of this, but at the end of the day, this means higher rates for renters. It means higher rates for individuals, because the landlord or the owner is not going to just absorb that fee. They're going to, in turn, raise rents or raise other fees, raise pet fees or whatever to get, recoup that money back. It's a situation where I realize there's a human component to it. And I do also agree that there should be some supplemental housing before an individual comes out from prison and then goes into private housing. There's got to be sort of a transitional period, because that lets the owner know, and it lets the property management company know this person's not going to be a threat to anyone, because there's been some sort of vetting process that's occurred before that's happened. So I'd agree with that sentiment. And I think that if this goes through, I do think that rates are going to be significantly higher. And unfortunately, rents are probably going to go up as a direct result of that. That's not fear mongering, it's a fact. So I think that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next I see Shelby Pash. No problem. Okay, thank you. Patty Harrington. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Patty Harrington. I live at 209 North Huron, longtime local resident and secretary of the Ypsilanti Historical Society Board of Trustees. The society is located at 220 North Huron. It houses a museum, an extensive historical archive, both focusing on the Ypsilanti area. Historical Society has been an incorporated organization since 1965 and has been recognized as a nonprofit since 1973. Our funding is exclusively from dues, donations, and fundraisers. Like any charitable organization, we can always use more funding, and would like to add Michigan Charitable Gaming to our fundraising efforts. One of the requirements for the charitable gaming application is a resolution passed by the local body of government in which the organization conducts its principal activities, stating the organization is a recognized nonprofit organization. For the Historical Society to move forward with this endeavor, we need your support in signing this resolution. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. All right, that is all that I have signed up on the sheet. I will take hands from the audience if there's anyone who would like to address council. Good evening.
Good evening, Council Mayor. I'm Kat Layton. I'm a Ward 3 city resident and also the chair of the Human Relations Commission. Wasn't expecting to be speaking about this since this is not on the agenda. However, feeling very passionate to speak about this in regards to the housing ordinance that you have heard in public comment today. I just want to first note that the Human Relations Commission was instructed that staff would write that. and present that to council. And unfortunately, it wasn't well written, and there were mistakes that a lot of the council members pointed out. And when that was brought to council on June 18th, we were told we were going to get to work on it and make it better. But unfortunately, it went back up to you for second reading. And I'm very grateful for the liaisons and the council members who were able to put the proposal on a table so we can continue workshopping it. And I first want to also clear up some misinformation again, because it's very important to include this information that there are already federal guidelines on housing and fair housing. You never have to rent to someone who's on a lifetime sex offender registry, or you never have to rent to someone who has been convicted of some manufacturing meth. That is a federal guideline that anyone and any housing provider has to abide by. It's really frustrating that the HRC had a lot of trust in staff to put forward a well-written ordinance with the intention and the spirit of the intentions in mind. And it's really unfortunate when people are advocating for affordable housing in their seats during election season are not actually sticking to that when it comes to it. For people who have public defenders who can't afford attorneys, they're likely to get charged. For people who are white, wealthy, and able to afford attorneys, they're likely to get dismissed or a lower offense. And so what you see is a lot of poor Black and brown people who have felony and misdemeanor records. And it was you, Mayor Brown, and some other people, Councilmember Will Coxon, who realized that felony and misdemeanor convictions with housing was a new Jim Crow, you were calling it, back in 2020. So why is it now, when there's an actual ordinance that can actually help, that's not banning background checks, just simply reordering the process? And it's upsetting that the presentation that we got from Nation Outside was not on the website, even though I had requested it be on the website for public transparency. But now those repercussions are being taken out on the HRC. It is a shame to weaponize your knowledge. It is a shame to weaponize this inability to be cohesive whenever we're trying to actionize what the HRC's scope is. And I would really appreciate a conversation and also an opportunity to talk more about this before we make any decisions, even though it's not on your agenda. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address council? Pastor Jackson. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Jackson. I'm also of the HRC. And I just wanted to make, I just wanted to make the point that I am really grateful to be part of this governing body to help encourage and better our community. And I know that there's a lot of complicated issues and challenges we're all trying to work through. And I'm excited that even though we are a newer commission, that there is a desire to continue to build more processes and procedures so that we're more data driven and we're able to present things in such a way that it's clear for everybody and everybody feels like they've been heard and understood. And so I know that is a process in developing that and growing in that. But I'm just, once again, I'm just grateful for each and every one of you. And I just wanted to take the opportunity just to honor everybody that's here and that's participating in this type of work, because the reality is there's a lot of things that we can do as a community if we come together and we work together and we're willing to listen to a diversity of ideas and opinions and beliefs in how we get there. And so that's all I really wanted to say. And I just wanted to put a good word out as well for the HRC, because I believe that everybody is really trying to do their best along this journey. And so I thank you for, again, the opportunity to be able to share just a little bit today. And I look forward to getting more involved in the community and hopefully encouraging other people to get more involved in these types of proceedings as well. So thank you again. Thank you for all the work that you guys do to serve our community.
Thank you.
Yep.
There any, Corn?
Hey guys, Corn Ypsi Township. I'm gonna keep it really brief, just because I'm gonna be talking to you a little bit later. But I wanted to bring up that in both the Police Advisory Commission and the Human Relations Commission, there were multiple public comments about police incidences this month. One of which involved a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head in police presence, and the other one involved a refusal from CMH to respond to a mental health call. And so in the public comments, there was basically citizens were asking the commissions to come to council and request body cam footage, and to also request that the chief report back about what happened in those incidences. And so I just kind of, since this was the first meeting since your guys' break, I wanted to make you aware that those are conversations that were being had in both commissions, and also say that I'm with the folks who are asking, why didn't CMH co-response come out in one incident, and why aren't we made aware of what happened in an incident where somebody is now still in the hospital, has a gunshot wound to the head, and the only witnesses are police officers saying that it's self-inflicted. And so just as somebody who advocates for crisis response from a community level and not a police level, both of those things are of interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience, please come. And if you could state your name for the record.
How y'all doing? I'm Duran Witherspoon Sr. I'm founder and CEO of Power Peace Enterprises. It's a newly formed organization from Ypsilanti area. I'm from here. I'm a byproduct of the struggle. My father was slain right across the street over there when I was 4 years old, right in front of me. Got into a little trouble as a youth. Done 12 years in prison. I got off parole last year, and I moved away to do better things with myself. And tragedy brought me back here because my little sister died of a brain aneurysm at 32 in March. So I'm trying to do something different with my life in honor of her. But I'm here today to ask you all, I'm challenging you all to give me all the resources that I need to help somebody never go through something I go through from the struggle from these areas. So on behalf of my brand, I'm willing to do whatever I need to do for somebody who comes from the ghetto, who has a little articulation that can bridge the communicational gap between people like you and people like where I'm from. So I challenge everybody here just to give me a helping hand, and let's see this through for the youth.
Thank you. Oh, yes, please come.
I'm Sal Castel. I'm a mom and pop landlord here in Ypsilanti. I own several properties. And I just want to carry on the gentleman that spoke earlier on the increased rental rate in the city. And I want to alert you that your millage for taxing housing here is one of the highest in the state, actually or higher than Ann Arbor. It takes me at least 6 months of the year just to pay tax. And then there is insurance and other expense. What people don't understand is that rent goes higher because of taxes. That's the main issue. It's not what the rent is in Ann Arbor. We don't care. We pay taxes. And yours, I want to make sure you know that the Ypsilanti millage rate is one of the highest in the states, and it's higher than Ann Arbor. I just want to leave you with that. Now, at least twice a month, I get requests from bigger companies to buy my properties. If guys like me, mom and pop, sell Barnes and Barnes and whatever Flomar buys it, the rents will go up. There's no doubt. They're actually bigger corporations like BlackRock that are buying properties. You have to do something about it. Taxation here is really insane. In the township, it's a lot more reasonable, but the city of Ypsilanti is absolutely something else. So just your attention.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address council? Is there anyone on Zoom?
Anyone on Zoom would like to speak, please raise your hand. No hands.
All right, seeing none, then I will close our audience participation. Councilmember Simmons.
Yeah, just a quick response, just to the person who spoke about the power piece, maybe intervention. But just to say too, in terms of looking for potential support, the city does have a youth mini grant. And the applications are on our website. And those are, we'll be looking at those in the next couple of months. So that would be one way to seek support. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda are presentations, but there's only one, by Corn. Welcome back, I guess.
All right, so basically what I gave you was some letters of support that I'm going to talk about, and then the current verbiage for the policy from the prosecutor's office, which is the second draft of language. And I think I brought this up in a public comment recently, I think before you guys went on break, but he's currently in conversations with law enforcement on publishing this second draft, but we worked with his substance use policy committee to get that language together. I also included another copy of the original letter of intent from the prosecutor's office, which basically in March said he was no longer going to prosecute folks for personal use or trace amounts who were in good faith utilizing drug checking services, which basically was what we used to write the resolution that I presented to you guys that tied. So in that presentation, I kind of said, even if this resolution doesn't pass, because we do have this agreement and are working on a policy from the prosecutor's office, we're going to go ahead and continue to try and get these services started in Ypsi, which we have done, and are working on closing a location. So the planning application and new business application have both been submitted to the city, and we're waiting to hear back on that. We do have, and I know I brought this up before, but we do have enough funding to be operational. It's partial funding, so we only have partial workforce funding, but we have our facilities completely covered and the location, and then we have the machine and the training covered as well. So we're going to be seeking grants to cover the rest of our workforce funding as we start offering services in Ypsi. And then Mayor Brown, you and I had a chance to talk about this a little bit yesterday, but there's some folks in the audience from MDHHS that would be willing to potentially help field some questions, but the plan is to use MDHHS funding for fiscal year 25 and 26 to keep services operational here in Ypsi. So I guess, long story short, we have the money to start services. We have a location with a landlord who knows, what we're going to be doing in the location, understands the need for drug checking services in Ypsi. And so we're ready to get started. I would very much like to have the resolution put back on the agenda for the next meeting with hopefully enough support to pass. And I wanted to ask if there's any questions that I could answer leading up to that. And again, reiterate that, the reason for this policy or the ask for this resolution would be to align the city's directives with the county policy. And this actually came up at the last YPAC meeting from the chair and another commissioner. And they were asking why, if there's this letter of intent that came from the prosecutor's office all the way back in March, hasn't YPD been directed not to spend any funds investigating or detaining individuals for these crimes, because it seems to be a waste of the city's money. So yeah, the letters of support that are included in that packet I gave you are from the U of M Nurses Association, from the Washtenaw Health Department, and then from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. There's also a award letter on there from the Michigan State Police, which is who funds our direct partner, which is Red Project out of Grand Rapids. I'm sure you guys remember I mentioned that in the last presentation. So their funding partner is MSP, who is then getting that money from a federal grant, which is from the Department of Justice. And so the funding is coming through Red Project, but it's through Michigan State Police and Department of Justice, who obviously support these services if they're funding them. So again, having support on the city level would kind of be the last check on the box. And in the presentation, I talked a lot about like why it's so important for us to offer these services in Ypsi. But if there are questions around that, again, I'd be more than happy to answer those today.
All right, thank you. Questions from council? Sorry, I'm not using them. Councilmember Sweet.
First off, thank you for this. I know we spoke probably, I don't know, maybe a month ago, a couple weeks ago about some of these things that you included. So thank you for your work on making these things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
In regards to the Red Project, you said as a funder, what is their, are they, and then you mentioned timeframes. Is there a time frame with this grant that they're receiving, and then you're receiving, you know, a portion of it? But what's the time frame on that?
Yeah, so they've kind of already received the funds to operationalize us for the year. So the funds for the machine, the training, and the location is kind of, that's already covered by them through that grant amount. They are in the process of like renewing that COSIP grant again right now. And I think the fiscal year starts again like October 1st or something like that, but it's been something that's been consistently renewed. So. Okay.
And they've agreed to be the fiduciary and then share some of that funding?
Yeah, we're actually, we have a MOA with them. And so I'm actually going to be directly working for Red Project as a co-director of LEAF, and then LEAF is going to be operating drug checking services in Ypsi.
Okay. Called LEAF, you said?
Yeah, so it's Liberation, Empathy, and Advocacy for the Future.
And then the last question I have right now, are you able to share a general location or address of the site yet?
Yeah, in general, I can kind of remind you guys, it was really important for us to be near the transit center, just because of overdose response in that area. So that is, yeah, we're staying true to that, and we're looking within like a block of the transit center.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and it's not a residential, it's still a commercial, like we discussed during the presentation.
Other questions from council? Councilmember McLean?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the presentation and for the packet. I'm looking through this fairly quickly. I think we got about 5, 6, 7 letters. Appreciate that. As I read through them quickly, I see a lot of support for the concept, but to follow up perhaps on Councilmember Sweet's questions in terms of location, what is considered best practice for a location? You know, a lot of cities do this kind of work. Why the choice of where to do it?
It's generally data driven, and so we look at like higher rates of incidences, overdose incidences in this case, and then of course the initial reason we needed these services or decided to start these services in Ypsi was because as far as fatal overdoses go, Ypsi has the second highest rate in Washtenaw and Wayne County. So it's second only to Detroit, which is problematic as a Ypsi resident since 2006, and a person in recovery and a person who uses drugs. I'm very invested in trying to facilitate any intervention to reduce those fatal overdoses in the place I call home. So and again, it's all data based.
Madam Chair, what kind of consideration is given? What kind of public notice might be given, if any, to residents, to businesses in the geographic area? Is that a concern? Is there a process around that?
Absolutely. I'm happy you asked. So there was actually a community forum on Washington Street yesterday with a lot of really concerned residents and business owners who basically were saying, hey, folks who use drugs in Ypsi need a place to go for services. They need a place to go for wraparound services, for housing placement, for they need a place to go so that they can get case management. They need a place to go so that they can get safer use supplies. And at the end of the day, a lot of folks are just saying they need a place to go. So yes, I think that this is an answer to what a lot of citizens and business owners are calling for, which is a place for folks who are currently not receiving services and might be congregating in areas because of that, to come and receive services and get some direction and some forward momentum to improve their quality of life. And so I think even the business owners and the folks who weren't at that meeting would agree that that's probably in the best interest of the city and everyone involved.
Those are all your questions? All right. Further questions from council? Councilmember Simmons?
Oh, thank you. Good to see you again. Just to kind of further that conversation, I've heard a little bit about the meeting yesterday, but obviously knowing that folks are really concerned about general like needs for substance use disorder and things that are happening kind of on the Washington Street block. And so I know you've talked about this before, but just to share how you would see this location being able to respond to some of those needs in terms of, you know, we talk about the drug testing, that's not the only thing that's happening in this space, right? And so that there's other supports that would be in there. And then you mentioned that you all have partial funding for staffing. And so just thinking about also kind of what you see as the ways for being able to reach the full level of staffing that would be needed to have that response. And also thinking about if there's partnerships with other folks that do that work in this area where they could do their services within that location. So just any conversations you've had around that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking that. So we definitely, Ashley, who's the co-director of LEAF, my business partner and really good friend, has worked in this community providing syringe access for years and years. And she works with, you know, several nonprofits and community organizations in the area that we're certainly gonna continue to be partnered with. But I think, you know, in order for this to really be impactful in the community that needs this intervention, risk reduction, counseling, and education is going to be really important. And I think as far as wraparound services go, that's something that we are going to be able to offer right away, along with, you know, supply distribution, prevention, supply distribution, and the drug checking. And so, you know, looking forward, we're looking to partner with a pro bono attorney to offer legal aid services and letter writing. We're looking to partner with social workers to offer case management and housing assistance. And again, I also work for CBS as their advocacy lead. So we're directly partnered with Fed Up and Growing Hope as well, which are folks who are already providing services to that population. So yes, we are looking to make community partnerships to kind of fill out those wraparound services.
You have additional questions, Councilmember Simmons? Or are you done?
Okay.
Okay, I'm just making sure. It's been a minute since we've been in the meeting, so you know. One of my questions we already talked about, but I wanted to ask it in the space around examples. We talked about like other communities that have done similar programming. And I asked you a question about, is there any data that talks about what happens in smaller communities when you place the services there? So like, is there sprawl or draw from other communities of folks like coming to utilize the services, or is it predominantly folks from the community that they've seen coming in.
Um,
That's
I,
what I-
I would say largely the latter, but I also, when we talked about this the first time, I heard what you were asking, and it seemed to me like, hey, what are the potential like negative impacts for the city within this? And I think there is a ton of data that the impacts from harm reduction services being made available in any area are overwhelmingly positive. And like when it comes to, you know, frequency and overdose and quality of life of people who use drugs, we see that like criminalization is what drives that, right? And so again, if we do harm reduction the right way and we meet people where they're at and we align our policies to do that, the positive effects for the city are the police are no longer wasting funds, time, and energy policing folks who are in treatment or looking to receive services. And so that frees up time for them to actually look for violent offenders and keep the city safe. Again, the benefit to business owners was something that was discussed at the meeting yesterday. And again, to improve the quality of life of folks within any community is going to have a positive impact all the way up, you know, up that chain. And unfortunately, the folks who are receiving services are considered, you know, the bottom of our Ypsi caste system. And that's just the truth of it. I think that's why, as we're looking to provide services, we have so much trouble, you know, getting fully funded and getting policies in line to allow those services to be like truly impactful. But yeah, so to answer your question, there's a ton of data around harm reduction in large municipalities, small municipalities, whole states, and it's all overwhelmingly positive.
And just for the record, I'm asking the question because we talked about in the meeting yesterday, a lot of concerns from, well, some of the concerns, I won't say a lot, some of the concerns were around seeing an increase of like new people in the community who some individuals don't feel have made a positive impact. And so one of the questions that I've gotten is around that. Like, is it going to continue to draw people from outside of the city into the city to utilize the services? Or is the focus on our community members primarily? And I'm not asking that question well, because I don't really have it formulated well based on what the conversations have been, but I think you get what I'm.
No, I hear you. And I spoke with Steve, who is the executive director of Red Project, about this today. I was hoping he was going to be able to hop on Zoom for public comment to kind of speak to this, but they have not seen anything like that in Grand Rapids. And again, if we want to look at like the closest thing to a local example, that's the only program that's operating in Michigan. And so they haven't seen anything like that in Grand Rapids. And I do feel like if you ask the folks who have been working with the unhoused population, they've seen most of these folks. They just haven't been on Washington Street. They've been camping. And now that there's showers and food available because Fed Up is set up on Washington Street, now they're on Washington Street. I don't think it necessarily means that folks are coming from other cities to take advantage of services that are meant for Ypsi. I think it's just the folks who used to be in the woods are now coming to hang out because there's some services available.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say, right? I don't know. My other question is around components. Like, is there a component around prevention?
Absolutely.
So what type of work would Leaf be doing on the prevention side?
And are we talking overdose prevention, or that's because that's what we're focused on is overdose prevention. And again, the case management aspect is focused on recovery at the individual's pace. So if there's somebody who's like, hey, my problematic use patterns are to the extent where like I can't do it anymore and I need to go to treatment, our very first step would be to set them up and get them into detox and treatment. And so again, we're never going to coerce people into abstinence because the data supports that does not work. If that worked, you know, folks wouldn't be overdosing now and we wouldn't be having this conversation. And so no, there's not going to be a coercive element to it, but 100% if folks are looking for abstinence-based recovery, that's something that we would help them achieve.
So I guess my question was more around, this is specific solely for folks who are already engaging in substance use, not, there's no preventative component around the front end to educate around prevention from even utilizing like these substances.
So as the program exists right now, there is not, but we have very limited funding. And surely if we were able to write a education-based grant in order to get out and do some community-based education work, that's something, or prevention education work, that's something that would definitely be of interest.
Further questions from council? Oh, Councilmember McLean?
Follow-up question, Madam Mayor. So you stated that you were not interested in using a coercive approach. So I appreciate that. But what about a strongly suggestive approach? I mean, and there's really quite a difference, right? I mean, it may not be a focus on abstinence, but a focus on really pushing people to consider treatment, right? I mean, I have heard from harm reduction providers who say, well, we tell them that treatment is available the first time they come, but in the name of not judging, they never say anything about it again, and that's their policy. And quite honestly, I'm not sure that's working, right? You know, I know I grew up in my family, and occasionally my younger brothers acted out. Probably I did too. And we kind of kept each other in check by saying, you know, it's not okay to do the stuff you're doing. So I'm really curious to know what the approach is, because I think we're dealing on kind of a social level, not just here in Ypsilanti, but around the country, trying to figure out how much is pushing people to help them, and how much to just say, don't judge, don't do anything, let them go in their own direction.
Yeah, I think when we start pushing people the same way that we push folks with anxiety disorder or depression to mitigate their symptoms that are affecting their quality of life, if we push folks who have a diagnosable substance use disorder in that same manner to reduce problematic use patterns that are affecting their quality of life, then I think that question would be answered. And again, that's a public health approach that as harm reductionists we are aiming for. Opposed to that is an approach where folks with diagnosable mental health concerns are being criminalized for behaviors that could be treated. And so you know, the way that we treat other mental health diagnoses is, you know, if we need a emergency pharmacological intervention, then folks get meds, and then they get counseling to work on problematic behavior patterns and improve their quality of life. And so again, we're not in a position to offer folks meds at all, but surely the counseling aspect, the risk reduction counseling, and the access to social work would be that strong recommendation to address problematic patterns.
Further questions, Councilmember Sweet?
I might have missed this, but the policy from the prosecutor's office, right, is still in a draft form.
It's version 2 of the draft. And so the last we spoke, which was earlier today, he still is waiting to hear back from heads of law enforcement, actually from Chief Moore, who I was hoping would be here today, because I think the primary opposition for that resolution was coming from Chief Moore. And when it came up at YPAC, he said that he still hadn't received any information about what the prosecutor wanted in his policy. And so I emailed it to him again too, but I wanted to be able to give him a physical copy. So hopefully that gets communicated, because again, it's the second draft. The policy team has all approved it, and it's now just waiting on law enforcement to respond to the prosecutor's office. But with that letter of intent, again, this is kind of just like a formality of publishing it.
Thank you.
Further questions from Mayor Pro Tem?
I don't have thank you for
additional information, the presentation you gave before, the conversation we had last night. I just want to pose a question to staff about point of order in terms of bringing this back. So this failed 3-4. And my understanding is that those in the prevailing side would have to bring it back. Is that correct?
3-3. It was 3-3 because I wasn't here.
Ah, got it.
You wouldn't be able to do a motion to reconsider anyway. It'd have to be brought back as a new resolution if council directed to do so.
Next meeting.
All right.
Further questions? Oh, sorry. Okay, further questions from council? All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys. And thanks for getting this on the agenda tonight.
Thank you, thank you. All right, we will now move into our consent agenda, and Councilmember Sweet, you have that.
Resolution number 2024-174, resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti that the following items on the consent agenda be approved. Resolution number 2024-175, approving the minutes of the council meeting of July 16th, 2024. Resolution number 2024-176, appointing Jeff Seafor to the Police Advisory Commission with a term ending February 1, 2028. Resolution number 2024-177, approving the request of Ace Pyro LLC for pyrotechnics permit for the fall 2024 football season at EMU. Resolution number 2024-178, designating Bonnie Wessler, Director of Public Works, and Tracy Boudreau, City Clerk, as authorized signers to sign MDOT contracts on behalf of the city. Resolution number 2024-185, adopting ordinance 1436, entitled an ordinance to amend chapter 106, article 5, section 106-454B of the Code of Ordinances to adjust water service rates. And resolution number 2024-186, adopting ordinance number 1437, entitled an ordinance to amend chapter 106, article 5, section 106-455A of the Code of Ordinances to adjust sewage disposal rates. And I so move. Support.
Supported. I can't remember, is it is it voice vote or roll call? Wait, please, the consent agenda? No, is he allowed to ask a question on the consent agenda? No, please call the roll. That's why it's on the list. Sorry. Sorry.
Councilmember Sweet.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson.
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons.
Yes.
Councilmember McQueen.
Resolution say. Councilmember McQueen.
Can you come back to me?
Councilmember King.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes. It's not represented over here. Represented in the packet.
Councilmember McQueen.
Yes.
Resolution passes.
Thank you. I just want to clarify what's happening up here. The line E feels a little ambiguous, but it's referencing the resolution in the packet, not all MDOT contracts ever.
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
Very specific.
Yeah, very specific to what was in the actual consent agenda, not all of
It
those.
doesn't reference that particular contract. So
But the resolution number.
that's why.
Yep, gotcha. Okay. Perfection. Councilmember Tucson, you have our first resolution.
Yes, resolution number 2024-179. Now therefore be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council recognizes the Ypsilanti Historical Society as a nonprofit organization operating, operating in the city of Ypsilanti for the purpose of obtaining a charitable gaming license, and I so move.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any presentation for us? Oh, you did talk to us. I meant from staff. I remember hearing from you. Anything from staff about this? Yeah. It's pretty, yeah, we know. We went through this last meeting, right? Or 2 meetings ago?
Provide all of the information that we.
Perfect. Okay, any questions from council?
Procedural one. So to be clear, this is not us opining on whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. It's simply stating for the record, because they require it, that they are an eligible nonprofit organization.
Absolutely, yes, that's all you're doing.
Any other questions from council? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Tucson.
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons.
Yes.
Councilmember McLean.
Yes.
Councilmember King.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcox.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, Councilmember McLean, you have our next resolution.
Resolution number 2024-180, whereas the city accepted a proposal from OHM to provide construction engineering services for the LaForge Factory Bridge project. And whereas the scope of that project has changed, now therefore be it resolved that the city of Ypsilanti approves the proposal from OHM for construction engineering services for an amount of $38,450. I so move.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Director West.
Okay, I'll take it.
Thanks, Tracy.
So all of the information is included in the RFL in your packet. It is two separate modifications for the a sum total of one modification, actually. So one is about the additional work that was needed on the factory bridge. Another modification was due to the addition of pavement on LaForge. So all wrapped into one thing because it was over LaForge and factory bridges were one contract. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Director Westler? Councilmember
is-
Simmons. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. This is not a big question, but what does NTE stand for? Like,
Okay, you know, add that to my text talk.
When texting with your DPS.
Yeah, NTE. Okay. Further questions from council? All right, seeing none, thank you. Clerk, would you all please call the roll?
Councilmember Simmons.
yes.
Councilmember McLean.
Yes.
Councilmember King.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcox.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, you have our next resolution.
Resolution number 2024-181, resolution to approve 5-year lease with Ypsilanti Senior Center, a Michigan nonprofit 501c3 corporation. It is resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that the certain 5-year lease with term January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2029 with the Ypsilanti Senior Center, a Michigan nonprofit 501c3 corporation for the lease, operation, and management of the Ypsilanti Senior Center facility at 1015 North Congress, Ypsilanti, Michigan 48197 be approved, and the mayor and city clerk are authorized to sign for and on behalf of the city of Ypsilanti, subject to the approval of the city attorney, and I so move.
Support.
Been moved by Mayor Pro Tem, supported by Councilmember Sweet.
Um,
Oh, sorry.
Council, this is a renewal of their previous MOU once they received their 501c3 status. Mr. Barr and I met with the attorney and Monica from the senior center. We made some minor changes, but it's very similar to what was presented before council. And Mr. Barr could probably answer any more detailed questions.
Thank you. Questions from council? Councilmember Simmons.
Yes, thank you. So I have a couple of different kinds of questions. So one, as I was reading the information, it says that the senior center is interested in acting as an agent of the city. And so that was making me wonder about what that means in terms of if if that relates to things like support uses and programming that is aligned with mutual goals, things that the city is putting forward. There were some examples in my mind around resiliency hubs, warming cooling center, night and weekend programming for youth, as I know they talked about doing more intergenerational work. So that's one question.
As I understand it, your question is, what does it mean that the senior center is an agent of the city?
Yeah, and the relationship between what they're doing there and city council's goals.
Let me give a little history on this. Some years ago, the city was in serious financial difficulty, And the city manager closed most of the facilities. He closed the freight house, he closed the pool, he closed the senior center and so on. And concerned citizens stepped up and wanted to help and wanted to do things. And so the general rule that we worked out was that this would work out, but we needed to have a viable entity to deal with who were going to manage the city facilities. And so we worked out a concept that to be a manager of a city facility, you should be a recognized corporation, a nonprofit corporation, and have federal tax exempt status. And so that happened for the pool and for the freight house. For the senior center, it didn't quite happen, but there had been a director there who had been working on it, and that continued with public donations and so on. So a while ago, a couple of years ago, senior center board of directors expanded and they got an attorney, I think maybe even 2 attorneys and some additional people on the board. And so they worked and they got their 501c3 and tax exempt and so on. And we had a previous agreement with the group that was not incorporated. And so this new corporation went through that and to put in some bells and whistles and whereases and so on that attorneys usually do, and agreed to expand the services there, and went out and got grant funding and money to help improve the services. So this is language in the contract which says that the corporation will be an agent of the city, and what that means is that there's a master agent relationship where the city is the master and the 501c3 is an agent, and they work for the city and generally under the direction of the city. It's not quite that clear, but it means that they're a subsidiary of the city. Sorry it took so long. to
No, that wasn't long at all, but thank you for that. And so the way I'm hearing it means that there could be ways that we could, in conversation, say, hey, here are some gaps, here are some needs. This seems like it could be a great space for it. It's aligned. How do we make this work? What kind of funding would you need? Things like that.
Absolutely. The city manager can meet with the board and make those recommendations and so on. And as I say, that the group has been fundraising. They're going outside the city for additional money. The city pays a small amount. I'm not sure, around $10,000 or $12,000.
Yeah, so that's what
$7,000.
Well, 6.
So it's been a good deal for the city.
Thank you. And so that was one of the other things. So that the sense of having a city rep on the board, is that in one of the new additions?
Yes.
And so then a question I have is just thinking about how that representative would be selected, if that's something that we have to determine.
Mayor would nominate and council would approve.
So I might have more questions there. Hold on, I'm just writing that down. And then so then you talked about the amount that the city has been providing to the senior center, so it's $6,000. And so I was just trying to get a sense of kind of what is that about and how it's been used in general, and like how that amount was determined.
That relates back to the original agreement. And as I say, in this particular case, they didn't have a 501c3 at that time, but they had a group of citizens, and they needed some money to keep the place open. And so the city said at that time, and quite honestly, I don't know how they came to the $6,000. I think maybe it was the heat and the lights or something like that. So the city said, well, we'll fund this money, you get the rest of it. And that's how it came about. The facility does belong to the city, and before all of this happened, the city was funding all of the finances for it, the salaries and all of the costs of the facility and so on. So this took a considerable burden off of the city.
So it sounds a little bit like it's kind of a hold on cost, like maybe at a certain time, it had a certain meaning to the organization that may or may not actually still be the same need at this stage, now that they're full 501c3 as well.
Mrs. Harrington came in earlier and said nonprofits always need more money.
I mean, please, I mean, we all need more money. So so that was one question. And then another thing I was just thinking about in terms of, so the city, so they rent the space for $1. So then I was just wondering about whether this would be considered a major benefit to an external partner, and what the cost would be if the city didn't provide such a deep incentive and appreciation, obviously, for them doing this work. We have a sense of how much it would be like if we were just renting out the building.
I'm not sure if I understand the question or not, but I think the question is, are we giving a benefit to the 501c3?
Mhm.
And it's really, they're giving a benefit to us.
Mhm. I mean, I feel that way about many of the 501c3s that do work in services.
If we didn't have the 501c3, the city would be bearing all of the costs, all of the staffing and so on with the organization.
The other question I have, and maybe this is something, I don't know whether this would be more something that they would be able to answer, but it talks about, this is number 7D, when it talks about the agent's duties. It talks about it being a space for things like public meetings and things like that. And so that to me would sound similar to what we do with the Freight House, which waives like rental fees for those kinds of events. But I don't know that to be the case at the senior center, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
It
All the
has been
time.
for some time.
We've had city council meetings.
Well, I know
there.
the city,
The
well,
CBO had.
I know the city can, so it does say specifically for city.
Right.
But this also talked about like basically public assembly. So I know people have looked for space and have contacted, but part of the reason whether things happen there or not is partially because of the fee. So like, I know the city, for city business,
Sure.
that is automatic. That was in this contract, but it also says for basically public assembly, which I know at the Freight House, you can reserve and you don't have a fee. So I'm just wanting to make that more, I guess, thinking about how to make that more clear then if this is another space that people can use for general assembly. Because I don't think that that's been the case from other things I know that have been trying to be planned.
I believe the Freight House has a fee schedule.
Now for public kind of community events.
So essentially, the city owns the asset, and then we let this 501c3 do all the managing. So they run all of the programming and set all this up so that the city doesn't have to. That's when Mr. Barr's stating that it is, they provide the benefit. They are doing all this programming free of charge for us, so we don't have to provide the senior programming. And they do have, they have a facility rental fee, and then that helps again fund their operations.
Yeah, and so in the contract, it states 2 different kinds of ways for rental. So it has like personal, like private rental with fee, but then it also says, this is under number 7D. It also has one that says it's for like general assembly and meetings and things like that. So when I read that and I see those things as being separated out for different purposes, I would expect it to then be treated slightly different and along the lines of other properties that the city also owns, but then other folks are also helping to run. So I guess what I would say for this is whether it's like outreach or kind of more clarification about that. But it seems like, yes, it's great. We get programming. Woohoo. I'm so excited about it. Just thinking if we're, so they have the space, we're providing this money, we're going to be on a board. That I think about like what that relationship is, how it's tied to city council goals, and then how our constituents are able to also use the space. And so I don't know whether that's saying I want there to be further conversation with them about that. What is that clarity in that process? Because it's unclear in this contract, the way that is named. Hmm?
Oh, no.
Sorry.
And then I guess the other question I have, this is more for us internally at the city. So it names the work that we do around repairs and maintenance of the space and building. And I'm just wondering how we've been doing.
So in terms of repair and maintenance, it's largely just, keeping up the grounds. They do the majority of their landscaping around the facility. We would do major repairs, and then the center would take care of minor things. So it's very similar to how we operate with Park Ridge.
And this, and snow removal too, I think was another
Correct.
thing that we do.
Mhm.
And the sidewalks, do they do the sidewalks? We do the sidewalks. So we've been at the top of our game with that. I guess this is just like it felt like a good opportunity for a little accountability of whether we're kind of holding up our end as well on that.
Those are all your questions? Okay. Well, Councilmember King, you had your hand up.
I simply wanted to state, especially with the news that Mr. Burgess gave us, that I would love to be the city representative.
Thank you for your interest. Councilmember Sweet, you had your hand up?
Yeah. I was just going to respond to some of the questions that, well, I had an additional question, but then what Councilmember Simmons was saying. So as a former board member of the senior center and someone who was on the board when we wrote the original agreement with the city, and then also reinvigorated the fee structure for venue rental and how that process worked, et cetera, I can speak to some of your questions. So there originally, when I joined the board, there was an informal policy that any registered nonprofit organization or entity, which was vague, in the city could rent the building for free of charge once per month. And that was going forward. So like the pool would occasionally use it for meetings if they needed to meet there, or they wanted to do some lesson registration there. The Little League has used it as a meeting space for coaches meetings and other things that I know of. They've permitted other entities to use it as well. And I think now it's been a couple years, but we were more, there was your flat rental fee and then a discount. So if you're a nonprofit, you pay like half off or whatever percentage discount is. And then there's still groups that were able to use it for free, but there was that limit of once per month. The rental revenue, when I was on the board, made up 60 to 70% of the budget for the senior center. So it is a huge huge component and huge asset to allow the building to be rented out at a nominal fee. And we were still under one of the lower rental venues in the eastern part of the county at the time when that original rental rates were established several years ago. So that's what I can speak to from that perspective, from what I've seen and what I know of the budget there and their processes. But again, this has been probably 3 or 4 years now. And then I just had a question about the striking or the adjustment from the 100 feet from the building entrance to 200. Was that a city recommendation or was that how they drafted the contract from the senior center perspective?
That was the senior center request.
They wanted the 200-foot buffer. Okay. And the city's still responsible for the maintenance and care of the parking lot, right? Okay. That's all that I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Going back to the question about the similarities of this with the freight house, in that I would expect them to be different because they're different arrangements since the city manages the freight house.
Oh, get out of my head. I was just saying that.
And when it was managed by a friends of, it was a very different relationship and very different fee structure. So
Yeah, when we took it back under our umbrella, I mean, we are managing it now when we weren't before, and Park Ridge, the senior center, are not managed by us. So they have the ability to set their fee schedule in terms of renting the space because they are operating the space every day, and we are operating the Freight House. Further questions? All right, seeing none, clerk, would you open?
Councilmember McLean.
Yes.
Councilmember King.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen.
yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson.
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Councilmember Simmons, you have our next resolution.
Resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the City of Ypsilanti has been awarded Community Development Block Grant funding by Washtenaw County to improve the accessibility of Recreation Park. And whereas in order to move forward with the project, the City of Ypsilanti must enter into an agreement with Washtenaw County for the subaward of Community Development Block Grant Funds, CDBG. And whereas the City of Ypsilanti intends to complete the design phase of the initial improvements to Recreation Park prior to the end of the fiscal year, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Ypsilanti City Council approves the agreement between Washtenaw County and the City of Ypsilanti for subaward of federal financial assistance and authorizes the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement on the city's behalf. The agreement shall be subject to review by the city attorney, and I so move.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem, supported by moved by Councilmember Simmons, supported by Mayor Pro Tem. My bad. Hello again.
Why,
Director
hello.
Wexler.
So there wasn't an RFL included in the packet, I don't believe, because I tried to sneak it in when I was out on vacation. It's not in the one online. But anyway, so we have been long pursuing the unification of the trail that goes around Recreation Park. A couple of years ago, we received funding from the county to do a sort of a feasibility study as well as a general outline of what that trail would look like. So that would be uniting the weird sidewalk parts, the goat path parts, the gravel parts, having one unified surface or at least a mix of asphalt and concrete, not a mix of 5 different surfaces, making it a lot more accessible and easy for people to use and to get around. So this would be sort of the first phase in actually constructing that, and we're looking specifically at doing the design work. This contract is to do the design work and putting together bid documents for the construction of a sidewalk connecting the senior center to the existing gravel trail. Currently, if you want to go from the senior center, you must go into the parking lot and then through the driveway cut that's not really a cut. So it's completely inaccessible for people who use mobility assisted devices. We figured that was a pretty easy, relatively speaking, low-hanging fruit. Construction is probably going to use up most of the rest of that particular years of CDBG allocation. And we specifically went through the feasibility for this project in order that it could be bitten off in these sort of bite-sized chunks as we get 50,000, 100,000, that sort of thing. So happy to go into exhaustive detail or leave it at that.
Questions for Director Wexler? Councilmember Sweet.
In this, the narrative description, scope of work in the packet here, it talks about phase 1 construction to begin, and then it says project completion date, and it has 2024, November 2024 dates on here.
Completely throw those out.
Those are out. So that's what I thought, because in the beginning of it, it also said end of our fiscal year, so 2025.
Right, so this is specifically the agreement with OHM for the design work, specific design for this. So if you go to attachment C, which is page 112 in your packets, you see a little red box around a specific thing. So it looks to, most people off the street like, wow, that is pretty exhaustive. That is a, however many feet wide path, and it goes here and everybody's happy. To actually have bid documents, proper bid documents that are suitable for CDBG, you have to have a lot more detail. So you have to have specific quantities of concrete and a specific type of concrete mix. You have to have the specific underlayment. You have to have a lot more to really move forward with that. So that's why, we'd be paying that $7,600 in order to do the design and the bid documents, which, for an engineered drawing is not that bad.
Thank you. Councilmember McLean.
Mayor, Director, a couple weeks ago, 2 Saturdays ago, I think, I went to the senior center. I think I shared some notes with my colleagues. And it was part of a planning process that they were engaged in. There's a relatively small amount of money. I think it's $100,000 for what was described by the architects that were there that day as perhaps a phase one. But they were encouraging brainstorming, and they had a few members of the community there that were talking about what they'd like to see. A few things came up that include some work on the exterior area, the kind of the back porch, if you will. And a couple of folks liked the idea of a pickleball court. So I'm wondering, how does this project dovetail with what might come out of that?
It's actually like a great reference to the earlier MOU that was discussed. So all capital improvements to the senior center project would be taken in partnership with the senior center and would be, subject to any sort of available funding at the time. So in that sort of thing, since it's not previously called out in a specific Parks and Recreation master plan, that sort of thing, we would probably look to them to do the majority of the fundraising for that project.
I'm more thinking,
CDBG funds are not great a fit for that particular type of project or facility projects in general also.
so I'm not necessarily talking about, I'm sorry if I was not clear, but my concern is, might we design a pathway that
Monica has these drawings. It doesn't work with
isn't consistent with other projects that they're thinking about?
So the only point of conflict that might occur, to the best of my knowledge at this point in the various design phases, is I believe we've spoken with you guys about the potential for a rain garden or native prairie planting for water management at the southeast corner of the park. Currently, we're in discussions about potentially relocating some of the spoils from any sort of excavation and elongating the berms or connecting the berms. That would have an interplay with the path, because currently the path is slated to go along the top of that southern berm. So that is something we would work out. We'd cross that bridge as we come to it. But to the best of my knowledge, that is currently the only point of conflict. Also, the expansion of the radius to 200 feet does actually overlap some of the areas that are used by other facilities like the Ball Diamond, but we will, address those as we come. The senior center is generally a great partner for.
Councilmember Simmons.
Thanks. So one, just like, so clarifying, so this is only a part of an overall grant. So there's the 86,000 that we'll have, and then.
So this is specifically for the design. The remainder of that 86,000 is allocated for the construction.
And so then that will come before us too. We'll expect that. And then also, this is just a question. This is just like to help me kind of keep my brain together, which is this the same kind of pot of money that we tried to get to fund a similar kind of project in Prospect Park when they were trying to do the walkway there?
Prospect Park, we cannot use this money because we have not yet done the archaeological survey.
Okay.
So, we will be using the similar funding source in order to do that archaeological survey.
So that's, you're saying that that's planned to do an archaeological.
So currently we are not in a position to use federal funding in Prospect Park due to its, historical uses. There's a number of them. And one of the things that is required when we use federal funds is something called a Section 106 review, which involves a review of the historic conditions. That 106 review would trigger a, archaeological investigation. And, so we just got to get that out of the way before we do anything else.
And then what's the timeline or thought around that?
So we do have it programmed for this year. Currently, we have not had the capacity to put out an RFP for that, but we anticipate doing that in the next couple of months.
Thanks.
Further questions from council? Oh, Mayor Pro Tem?
Just a comment. I was glad to hear that they were looking at the way the walkway goes through the middle of that section to the southeast has been problematic for some time, not just for the park, but for people that live on the adjoining street. Glad that that is the option. I can imagine more involved engineering to deal with that, but I'd rather see it as a rain garden than retention. So that's cool.
Further questions or comments? Clerk Boudreaux, please call the roll.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcox,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Ypsi,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember McCray.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. Councilmember King, you have our next resolution.
Resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the City of Ypsilanti adopted a special events policy, and pursuant to the policy, the city may co-sponsor an event or waive event fees if it is of general interest to the public and advances the city's public image. And whereas this year, the Park Ridge Summer Festival and Joe Doolin Community Day will take place Saturday, August 24th in Park Ridge Park. And whereas the Park Ridge Summer Festival and Joe Doolin Community Event organizer is requesting that the city waive and permit fees for the 2024 event. And whereas the city council agrees that waiving permit fees of the 2024 Summer Festival and Joe Doolin Community Day would be in general interest of the public and advance the city's public image. Now therefore be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council approves the request to waive permit fees of the 2024 Park Ridge Summer Festival and Joe Doolin Community Day in the amount of $1,535 and police service fees in the amount of $908.60. I so move.
Support. Moved by Councilmember King and supported by both of them down there, but whoever you heard first.
Councilmember Simmons.
Simmons, okay. All right, City Manager.
Hello, Council. This is before you now following the event. The application was not received, but this is something Council has typically funded in the past. Anthony Williams is here to answer any questions that you might have.
Good evening, Mr. Williams' son. All right, any questions from council? Councilmember Simmons?
Hello.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. So one of my questions I have for this one was looking at, so there was the fees, I guess, for the rental and then for the police officers. And then it looked like it was requested for there to be 14 police officers at the event. I'm trying to figure out if this is something that is required or something, or if this was that y'all wanted to have them there and then now that there's fees for.
Well, and that's why I'm here, because we didn't request any police fees. So this is year 14 of the Park Ridge Summer Festival and Joe Doolin Community Day. Usually, I'll say out of those 14 years, maybe a third of the time you guys waive the fee, which is generally $500 non-refundable and about $348. So to my surprise, when I looked at the invoice of $2,500 and all the police requests, I immediately reached out to Wendy Esty, who told me that, actually said that the police chief put the police on there. So we weren't aware of that. We've never asked for requests for police services. However, not that there were 14 officers there, but that whole police presence things did bring a whole different element of community cohesiveness. It just, to me, it just helped the whole festival this year. Not only the police, but the firemen and everybody was there. So I did not request that, first of all, and it's higher than it's ever been. So that's why I'm here. And actually, last year I informally asked this group to be the sponsor from the city of the Park Ridge Summer Festival. So this year I'm going to ask, how do I go through that formal process? Because it's a great event for the city, and the city should be very much a part of this. And if it looked anyway like it did this year, with all the city departments there, I think it just, bodes well and something that's positive for the community.
Thank you. I saw some folks being like, what are you talking about? I'm looking at the, this might be the invoice or something for it that itemizes all the things. So there's there's the application fee, class 2 event, security deposit, noise permit. And then there's 2 different lines for 7 police officers for 11 to 6 per hour.
I have a paper copy if you want.
Yeah.
We have different like I'm looking at different, which document is it?
Oh, this is it's the one that lays out the billing. So this is the one from,
Page 129.
yeah, I don't
I'm
know.
looking at the thing through the Civic Plus,
Yep, this
not
is
the.
it.
Yeah, I'm looking at it from the Civic Plus
Okay.
too.
Oh, I got it. Okay, thank you.
So just like so folks can see that. So that's why I thought that was kind of put together based on what you all would have put forward. So it's interesting to hear that was added. And so that's why I was like the numbers, it's 7 and 7. So it's 2 different things, plus then also an administrative fee of 10% for police services. So
I inquired about it when I talked to you at Summerfest. That was not a request made by our department either. I think that was a slip of the finger or something, like a oversight, because that was not requested by our chief either. Because when you told me, I was like, 14 officers, we don't even, how? Like, that doesn't even.
yeah, that's what I was confused
So
about.
that was not a request that was made. I'm not exactly sure, because again, things happen, but that was not a request there. So I think this was a type. Or
Typo.
Typo.
We don't
Yeah,
got
that's
it.
the word, typo. But I will say, there was a lot of positive feedback about the presence of the officers that were there. I think there were 3 or 4 that were around throughout, not, consistently coming in and out, and they were engaging with the community, and folks felt comfortable with them there. I actually like kind of did a little, I was perusing and walking over to see what was going on. And so it was welcomed. But that 14 number, that was definitely not requested.
Oh, I guess I'm wondering, will that be removed? And also, will that fee be removed? And also, what is the requirement for police to be at events?
I don't know.
I'd have to check the policy and with Wendy, and I can provide that information to council tomorrow.
Thank you.
And will this amount be removed from here?
That's in the resolution, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, it is. Okay.
if council wants to do a different amount, then we would just, we'll just remove that. But if you approve it as is, it will automatically forgive it.
Yeah, it's in the resolution already. Further questions from council? Oh, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry.
I just want to say thank you for putting it on. I've been there for several years
Mhm.
and have staffed 4 different tables in the community organization area. And that's been great. The presence of U of M was a surprise to me this year, but that was huge. They got a lot of folks going through there too. I also want to say that there were a couple firemen there with police officers, and that was appreciated as well. There's a lot of people engaging with those too. But different look to the event. More organized, more, I think
Getting those guys together.
Yeah, I think it came off very well, and thank you.
That's where I think you guys should be, because, the county takes a lot of the success for doing it, and I think that the city should be more.
Well, yeah, I was gonna comment on this during my business, but it was really wonderful. I mean, the configuration, the layout this year, I think it was like spot on how things should look. And once the resources left, it didn't take away. People were still like, congregated towards the stages for the performances. There were more resources than I've probably ever seen there this year too. It was just really nice. It was a great day. I spent
Yeah, you were there?
I spent 7 hours there. Yeah, so I mean, I didn't plan to, but I spent most of my day there because there was just so much going on and so many people, and we got to talk to so many folks and engage with so many people. And so I guess city manager, my question would be around like, can you remind us of the process of like sponsoring events, like being official sponsors? Because I know we've done that for like Juneteenth and stuff.
Yeah, if you would like to do that, then we could amend the ordinance, the special events ordinance, and add this to it.
Oh, okay. And do we have to just bring that back here?
Mhm.
Okay. But you all did a wonderful job, seriously.
Worked hard on it.
Yeah.
If
wonderful.
it just, I mean, the way that the invoice was written that I saw and those services that came out, if the contribution is just that,
Mhm.
I just think that works out well for us.
To waive the fees.
And to have the police there and the fire and all. And actually just connecting with them anyway, the chief of the fire department, we just make a phone call, they're there. The only thing I would see if we could add, that trash process of, we only have the one dumpster. So if we could, I don't know, work with facilities to see how we can make that process a little easier.
But
that's the only
Can I
thing.
ask you, would that mean like more trash receptacles, or like what would you recommend if just to, oh, she's not here.
Well, I think the receptacles and the way we have volunteers is good, but where we put it afterwards. So,
Oh, okay.
In my other role, I'm going to probably be talked to tomorrow about the dumpster being full for public housing. And maybe behind parkerage, because that's kind of where we put stuff. But just to have a place, I don't know if you can pull a dumpster up to the back or whatever, so we can just put everything there.
That's the other piece I was going to commend you all on. Y'all had those volunteers out there. They were cleaning up throughout the whole day. I mean, just very well executed, like very well. And your shirts this year, ooh, they were stylish, very nice.
I want
really love
one.
those.
I want one.
Love those neutral tones on the t-shirt. So,
Did a good job.
yeah, it was a great job. City manager.
I just was informed, police presence is determined by the size of the crowd, the perspective size of the crowd.
Oh, okay.
We usually put about 1,200 down as the number.
Councilmember King?
So, 2 questions. Do you know how many people participated this year?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
A lot. Look, a lot.
I don't know. And that's one of the things I was thinking about, because somebody was talking about data and metrics earlier. How can we track that? Because it's from 11 to 3 when the nonprofits, which was over 75 nonprofits there. When they're there and they're under the tent, it's hard to gauge. And then when they leave, you can't gauge the people who never come down because they're on top of this hill up here and they stay there. And then the people is there. So I don't know. I guesstimate somewhere around 1,300, 1,400. It's not as, I think it's bigger than last year, but not the biggest one we've had.
Oh, and I just really was gonna ask another question about the shirts, because as I seen the shirts, I thought they were very nice as well. And one of the names on the shirts, Mabel Comer, her children are still here, and I know they wanted to know if they could potentially have a shirt.
I can get one for them.
Thank you.
Mr. Barr?
Have we answered the question that Mr. Williamson asked about the city support of it?
Well, city manager explained the process, and so we bring it back in the special events ordinance.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Barr. You know, he's making sure we get this done. Further questions from Mr. Williamson or comments from council? All right, seeing none. Thank you so much, though.
Thank you.
Seriously,
My
it's
pleasure.
a beautiful event.
As I say all the time, you guys are going to see me more. Maybe
Good.
I won't be smiling as much.
Awesome. No, smile all the time. All right. Clerk Michelle, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson.
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons.
Yes.
Councilmember McLean.
Yes.
Councilmember King.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Tucson, you have our next resolution.
Indeed. Resolution number 2024-184, resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the City of Ypsilanti adopted a special events policy, and pursuant to the policy, the city may co-sponsor an event or waive event fees if it is of general interest to the public and advances the city's public image, and whereas the ecclesia
Ecclesia.
I'm sorry, Fellowship Ministries gathering took place Sunday, August 25th on Washington Avenue. And whereas the Ecclesia Fellowship Ministries gathering event organizer is requesting that the city waive the permit fees for the 2024 event. And whereas City Council agrees that waiving permit fees of the 2024 Ecclesia Fellowship Ministries gathering will be in the general interest of the public and advance the city's public image. And now therefore be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council approves a request to waive permit fees for the Ecclesia Fellowship Ministries gathering in the amount of $1,752.40, and I so move.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Tucson, supported by Councilmember King. Is there sorry.
Council, this is another situation where they applied after there was a meeting, so this would again be retroactively. There is Pastor Swanson should be online to address any questions.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Pastor Swanson, if he's on there.
Good evening, good evening.
Anything you want to share about your event before we ask you some questions?
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you all for the opportunity just to appear on behalf of Ecclesia Fellowship Ministries. Our church has been in the community for nearly 25 years, and we are always just looking for opportunities to simply get outside and to share community with those around us. And so that's what we did this past Sunday. And we were excited to announce scholarship recipients for young people who don't attend our church, but who we just wanted to kind of be a blessing to. And so we announced those at the event. We gave food from the church premises to a lot of community members who came from near and far. And with that, we just request that you all approve the waiver of the fees for us.
Thank you. Councilmember Simmons.
Hello, thank you. Always excited for community events. I actually didn't know about this event, and I know this is in Ward 3. But some of the things as I'm looking at the information, I'm trying to see, I guess, kind of how this fits in the same space as some of the other events that we have waived. When looking at the details, it says in a couple of places that this was an event for the church membership. And it says that, it kind of alludes to that in a couple of different spaces, that this was primarily for people who are members of the church. And when I think about some of the events, when we see them being promoted widely, we kind of see them around in different places in terms of thinking about larger, more public events. And even with the size of this event, it seems sized more for more private event for a smaller community within this community. And so that would be, I would put that forward in terms of kind of why we would choose this church event and not other church events that might individually hold events that could be primarily for their members, and maybe other people can come too. And so I wanted to bring that up. And then the other thing I was just noting too, and this might have even been relevant for the other one, but just in terms of noticing too on the when looking at the itemization, that there's like the credit card fees, so for the ways that they paid, and so if we waive those, that just means the city then is paying those, because that's to an external party, correct? That's not like within the city.
Yes, that's correct.
So that's just naming that then creates outflow as well when we are waiving that particular fee, as opposed to some of the other ones that are much more internal. So I just wanted to bring that forward too.
Further comments or questions from council? Councilmember Sweet.
I don't have anything necessarily additional, but my comments were going to be the first thing that Councilmember Simmons brought up from review of the packet. where it illicitly stated that it was designed as a members or members only, almost like event or function. So that was my concern as well.
Further comments or questions from council?
Our presenters offered an opportunity to respond.
Yes, you can. Sorry, I actually forgot you were on there. Yes, you
Yeah,
can.
no worries. I tried to pull up the application on my end. I think the application is kind of made once you submit it, you don't see it, but I don't think that it was presented or like that we applied to it saying that it was only for members. It's absolutely not just for members. It's sponsored by members, but it is the event is definitely, and our events have always been open to the public. And so, like I say, and actually at this event, I would probably guesstimate that over 90% of the participants and 90% of those who received the resources that we offered were actually like non-members. I'm wondering again, like I say, if it's the fact that the members pay for it. So the members pay for what happens, but it's not, like this isn't something that is only for members. And I think that also goes to the numbers that was like mentioned, since this is something that we offer to the community and that we don't want to charge people for. We don't, I guess we don't shoot high, and so like we don't shoot for like 500 people. We just kind of like aim for, like for a number that we can kind of just use our resources for to cover. But that doesn't limit our marketing, or the invitations. All are still welcome.
So just for clarity in terms of where I'm seeing this in this application. So there's two particular places. One is in the full description and purpose of event. It says this event is a social gathering for members of our church. And then when there's the question about plan for ejecting unruly / disorderly persons from the event, it says this is a church function. We do not anticipate this. So just to clarify, where I'm seeing that. Totally understand trying to manage budget and things like that in terms of kind of thinking about open invitations. I just am naming that when I'm thinking about something that's a community-wide event that will pull from the whole of the city in providing kind of recreation or services or different things like that, that is something that I would that I do consider, and also thinking about how to think about what are the differences between the different kinds of events that we sponsor, and then who would then be asking for us to waive fees in the future based on some of those decisions.
Yeah, and I just pulled up the application, and I will, I guess maybe cross-reference. I'm not there in person, unfortunately, so I can't cross-reference it, but I did just pull the application up, and what I submitted, the first line is the Family, Friends, and Community Day will be a community outreach day. And so I honestly don't, that's why I'm kind of lost as to why it's like being presented as it's only for members. I have the waiver request saved here on my laptop, and I just put it up, and that's the first line on my end.
The application that was submitted that we have, that I'm wondering, I don't know if this is a good question to ask, but I'm wondering if you completed did you complete the application or just the waiver request? Because I think those are two different things. And the application says what Councilmember Simmons read. Maybe I think the waiver request might say something different because they're two different documents.
Okay, yeah, understood. Yeah, I just have the special event fee waiver request.
Yeah. So that's where this is coming up at, though. It's two different documents. So the one that you have is not we have both of those, but the one that she's reading and referencing says what she read. So do see in the, what is this called? Yeah, the waiver request. I do see what you're referencing, Pastor Swanson. Further comments or questions from council?
Quick question.
Okay.
So is this an event that has always been open to the public? I guess just for more clarification.
Okay, sorry about that. I keep getting muted, but yes, the event has always been open to the public for for the past 20 plus years. We have typically only been able to have the event at like the Belleville Park. I think one time we were able to have it at Park Ridge, and now we just simply like to have it outside our church and on our church grounds. And so yes, it has always positively 100% been open to the community. And then again, like I say, I reiterate that I know this past Sunday, 90% of those who attended and those who received, who received from us were non-members. And I would venture to say roughly 40 to 60 young persons from the community.
And I guess one more follow-up question. Is this something that we should look forward to every year? It's getting the fee waiver request?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nope, that was the question. You can go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. So last year was our first time having it on the church grounds, and it went really well. And this year, so this was our second time. And so we know more now, and we can, jump ahead of it better next year. But yeah, we definitely want to continue to have it on the church premises.
Any additional questions or comments from council?
I guess I have a question for us as council. Because this came up before, not with this particular event, I'm wondering, how do we determine what events to support and what events not to support? And where would the funding for this event come from?
Well, okay.
In terms of the funding, it would just be loss of revenue.
We're not paying anything out except for
Okay, right.
credit card fee, the $67, but we just wouldn't make anything.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you. And then the other question, I guess, because that was two questions.
The criteria for who we would waive fees.
Yes.
Didn't we have a policy for that? Like we were coming up with one?
A policy was created for the youth mental health grant. In terms of this, there is not currently one. If council would like to have something approved, staff would need some direction on what type of metrics you're looking for. And there has been since the special events ordinance has, when you have a certain amount of, there are some requirements included that, but if you want to make it a little bit clearer how fees are waived, then yeah, staff would just need some direction on how you would like that to be.
Yeah. Mr. Barr?
Councilmember King asked some excellent questions because you're setting a precedent here and you're going into some difficult waters in regard to how do you make those decisions that she mentioned. So I think a lot of thought should be given to this.
Thank you. And I agree. I was going to say that just like we came with parameters around like requests coming into us at a certain point in time, so we can go through them, or events that, we know are like annual or community events, then we have an opportunity to set aside an amount of money for that and then approve what we're going to approve instead of as they go, because then it adds up over time. And also, what precedent are we setting, as Mr. Barr stated and Councilmember King brought up. So we probably should have a formal process since this keeps happening more and more. Mr. Barr?
I'd also like to point out that the council cannot legally make gifts. So there has to be a definite city benefit to what you do when you're
Mm.
using city money.
That's important. Thank you. Councilmember Simmons?
Thank you. So when thinking about the ways, this is a question, or I guess a procedural question, when people pay, is there another way that they can pay besides credit card? That
They could use check or cash.
and so I don't know kind of where that is, but especially for when seeking a waiver, if we can encourage people. I know we sometimes do that. In my job, we're like, well, if you don't want us to pay a fee, you could use check or something like that. And so just thinking about ways to encourage that so that we're not then covering kind of this outflow, because obviously the fee is kind of determined by the amount of the charge. So
I'm sorry, are you done, Councilmember Simmons, before I
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
that hand in the sky? All right,
Oh,
Council.
I was just gonna say to that, to Councilmember Simmons' point, maybe we just write that into the resolution that the city will refund all fees except for credit card fees are the responsibility of, the client, because we're not collecting them, they're going to another entity and you should be responsible for that. I think would be normal business practice for other, private entities as well, that we're not gonna shoulder that burden. So I think that is important, to have incorporated in there.
City manager?
And then in the policy, we could just include that no fees from, transaction fees will be included in.
In the yeah, that's great.
Yes, thank you.
Right. Sorry. Further comments or questions from council? Councilmember King?
In the past, how have you all handled this?
I mean, we.
What's that?
She said how we handle this in the past, and we just decide, we talk about it and we make a decision. I would, well, never mind. I'm not gonna say. Mayor Pro Tem.
To your point, there have been years that we have approved certain things early in the season, and then it ran into, well, we funded this, and how is this different? And then what happened that particular year was people came out of the woodwork asking for waiving of fees, things like that. And this is coming out of COVID, right? So everybody's coming back, and it was not well planned, and we got into a situation where we spent way more money on it than we expected. And so I think the next year we rolled back on that, and we're way more conservative in terms of who we gave the money to. But there wasn't a set policy, as mentioned before, is like, here's the applications, and here's, we don't have a period, or say by this date we have the application in, so we can weigh them all next to each other, right? And it's a rolling calendar for these things. So to the point of, if we were to set aside, a certain amount that we would do, that would go along.
Like the youth mini grant.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I did, am I able to continue giving comment?
Sure, we're
Yeah,
still in discussion.
so I'm still here. There are a few things that I kind of wanted to note here. We're happy to cover the credit card fee in this situation. And as a pastor and also as an attorney, I totally understand the idea of like precedent. But I do also want to say that, there are certain extenuating circumstances that do, in many cases, govern exceptions, even if it's just like a one-time exception. And I would think that this is one, because we did have the event last year. We did not have to pay these fees last year. And when we went through the application process, I didn't even think that it would be like this much of a discussion, which I totally understand. But the other thing that I wanted to state is that this is also more of like a security situation, because we're not like, this isn't us using like a park. This is really us trying to block off the very small portion of Washtenaw that runs by our church, is between Hamilton and Adams Street. So that very, very small portion of Washtenaw, in essence, we're we're paying for like a roadblock to prevent, again, we have so many kids that come, like, we don't want cars to be able to come through and like hit someone for there to be an accident. And so the only thing that was really provided in this situation was like, I think like maybe 2 roadblock type wooden instruments. And that's pretty much it. You know, I think the parking was also this year was also blocked off, but like that isn't really necessary either. At the end of the day, we just need the street by our church like closed for, which isn't like extremely traveled. And we just need it closed for like safety purposes. And so that's what this is. But 90% of the event takes place on like on our campus and on our premises. I hope that grants like some, you know, some gives you some type of peace as well. Again, I understand everything that has been said. And I think for next year, we would definitely, you know, we would definitely revisit this, but we had the event last year. It was free. And we thought that going through this process would kind of be pretty much the same thing as last year.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
This block is considered a major street. I know it's Washtenaw, but
Yeah, it says
that's
it's
the busy part of
Washtenaw.
Washtenaw.
It is considered a major street.
So if they closed off Adams, it'd be wholly different. It'd be $500. Right? Oh, well, never mind then.
Oh.
Were Adams and Washtenaw both closed off or no? No.
It's Washington.
Oh, okay.
Councilmember McLean.
Mayor, I think this is a good conversation. So partly we're having a conversation about this particular case, but
Yeah.
we're talking about the process too. So I certainly support a thoughtful effort to do this in a more systematic way. But while we're thinking about it, before we forget, I'll move to amend to remove the credit card transaction fees from the waiver.
Been moved.
Support.
And supported. Discussion on the amendment to remove the transaction fees. Any? Seeing none, please call the roll on the amendment.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember McLean,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson.
Yes.
The amendment carries.
Thank you. So now we have the amended resolution, which just subtracts the transaction fee. Further discussion, questions or comments on this resolution? Seeing none, Clerk Bureau, please call the roll on the amended resolution.
Mayor Brown,
Abstain.
Councilmember Sweet,
No.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
No.
Councilmember McLean,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen.
No. 3-3.
So that means
It fails.
The motion fails.
Right.
Can I ask a question? Reason for abstention?
I am likely still considered a member of this church. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next we have a discussion regarding the process and procedure related to boards and commissions. I'm not sure how. who added this.
So this was the procedures in question are how a board or commission would request funding. The previously adopted application and policy were in the packet. So staff would just need direction on how you would like to fund this or how you would like to amend it. If you like to keep it the same, should there be a committee to review this? Do something a little bit more thorough, whatever council feels would be proper.
And then this was added by staff or by council, this discussion?
This was requested by council. Some boards and commissions have asked processes on how they request funds. This is what's in place. And council has requested that this be brought before it and discussed, and then amendments made. So however council would like to move forward with this, staff can propose changes, or a committee could work with staff in order to make amendments and then bring it back before the whole council. We can go through a discussion right now, but it's whatever council would like.
Councilmember King?
And just for clarity, was this just drafted or is this something that has been presented?
This was approved in 2019.
Oh, okay, thank you.
But. Councilmember Simmons? So approved in 2019, but not necessarily kind of followed exactly.
There haven't really been requests for funds. This was approved right before the pandemic, and then really no requests kind of followed that. And then there really wasn't a budget for it for a while, but it's still the process that was in place.
So I kind of like looking through the document, like kind of have a list of either, specific changes like, oh, it's parks and arts now. So things like that, as well as a couple of question marks. So for instance, it talks about like a general allocation. I think that I would think like the process we want to do might move away from general allocation to kind of these specific requests. And so I kind of have a list of things like that where there's some either questions, changes, updates to specific parts. So depending on how we want to go about that. And then also just thinking about like additions. So like for the form, I think there should be a part where they talk about how this request connects with city council goals and requests that we send to the commission, so that there could be kind of that feedback loop on there. And then also for us to think about timeline and also like response time for council. So I think there's a few things we could do. I'm happy we could go through it here, but I don't know if there's another way folks would like to do that.
Perhaps, thank you, Mayor, in response to Councilwoman Simmons' question, I think this might be a great idea for the subcommittee, for a committee of the council to evaluate. I agree with Councilwoman Simmons' idea that we get some feedback from the commissions themselves, although I would ask them up front, question, if we were to fund you, what would you use those funds for? I imagine we might have quite a range of, some might say they have no need of them. Others may want significant amounts. One of the questions that this committee, if we create one, should answer is, do we set a ceiling for all the commissions at the same level, or do we have an overall ceiling from which we draw, and when those funds are depleted, that's it? But they're good questions. They do need some feedback, I think, from the commissions themselves, and I think a committee would be in order.
Councilmember Simmons? So just a quick question in terms of if there's a committee, which yeah, I'm happy to pass my notes along to whoever's in that committee. But
One question I have is just in terms of thinking about like timing. So I know part of this is because we've been starting to get some requests. I know the Sustainability Commission is in process of trying, and I'll give that update, but they're trying to get things together for hosting Earth Day event, and securing a space is going to require funds since the Freight House is being rented by UMS for the month of April. And so they haven't had that before. And so anyway, just to think about, I think, what is the interim? Because I know we had a request from the HRC and the Police Advisory Commission, I think, right, for something, and we were unclear about the process for allocating funds for that. And so I think that if we are going to go into further decision-making process for this, that we should have an interim plan, or a way for folks, whether they kind of do their requests as they would, whether it's coming to council or having it go through the council liaison. Other comments from council? Mayor Pro Tem?
Go back to the question of it, whether, sorry, I missed the beginning of this discussion, but so this is an active policy. Right. All right. So this would be the interim thing until, not like we don't have a policy, this would be it. All right.
Okay, so then we would just tell folks, so the interim thing would say, hey, fill out this document and put it in front of us. So that would be kind of what we could tell people to do now. Okay. So that would mean that currently then every board has access to $250 to start at a baseline?
Yeah, then there's a threshold that can be approved administratively by the clerk.
Okay. Further discussion? Councilmember Simmons? Just for clarity, and so then folks could kind of contact the clerk directly on those things, and then if there's, so one of the situations was, for instance, for space rental, then could the clerk actually rent that on the commission's behalf directly from like the city's credit card or whatever?
The $250 is for printing and publishing.
Oh, but it's a 500. It says request under 500 may be administratively approved. And by the clerk's department. So yeah.
So again, that no one could just call up the clerk and request this. Everything would have to be done by motion and vote. And then that resolution would go to the clerk to determine that if it meets the criteria of this policy. And then if it's denied by the city clerk, the border commission can appeal to the city manager. But this is it processes of how the space is actually rented. That's not really determined. That could either be the chair of the commissioner board, and then they can just have the city clerk put it on the credit card for or payments, or depending on the time ahead, we could just cut a check as well.
Mayor Pro Tem.
The same part, section 8, talks about the department head housing the requesting board or commission. I could see that a lot of our commissions don't have a department that it would have, but they have liaisons from certain departments, and I want to make the distinction between those two things. So like sustainability.
Sustainability would be Bonnie. The department overseeing sustainability is DPS or DPW.
But HRC, is that
HRC would just be the clerk department.
Councilmember McLean?
I would just make a procedural note that the current policy doesn't handle requests of $500. It handles requests over 500. It handles requests under 500. It doesn't handle requests of 500.
Okay,
Very specific.
Don't ask for 500 bucks.
Don't ask
Yeah,
for
exactly.
501 and one or 499. That's it. For now, until we change it.
Yeah, with the next finance director.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, whew, finance director coming out. Councilmember Sweet and then Councilmember King.
So I guess my question was, do we think we want to move forward with what Councilmember McLean proposed and put forward a committee to kind of get this going? Obviously, I think there's a lot of changes that, well, at least several that we want to make to this, and how we can get those implemented in a fashion that's somewhat prompt.
I would be in support of a committee, not probably sit on. I would be on the committee. Yes, I would.
That's the first part.
I was about to ask.
Who's gonna be on it if we're gonna have one? You know?
Fully support you.
Yeah, all right.
I can take a picture
We got
and
one.
send you.
A committee can't be just one person.
I have time. I can commit to
Oh,
this.
Councilmember Sweet, that's two. Y'all want to be the committee?
Assuming he was gonna.
I was about to say, it sounds like a rep from every ward.
Don't sound like this one was
I'm
interested.
Oh, wait.
All right.
Good
He
idea.
said, he said, I have ideas. I don't know if I'm gonna do it.
We'll have a word speak about this.
Okay, Mayor
we
Pro Tem.
go.
All right, Councilmember Tucson, Sweet, and Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen will be our mini subcommittee on this. Please,
Yeah.
everybody send your ideas to them. Yes, that sounds great. Okay.
And so I did have a follow-up
Oh, yeah, sorry.
question. With this now being surfaced, I am wondering about the motion we made for the joint HRC and YPAC. Which one would be in effect? Would it be the $400? Right now, our forms are on hold, but which one would be in effect? Would it be this?
It'd be the resolution. I
Okay.
voted on it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Further, do we have to vote on this committee or can they just get to work, Mr. Barr?
They can just get to work.
All right, great, wonderful. Just want to
All
make.
right, we'll see you later.
Yeah, good to know. Okay, so we have a committee that will work on this. So you all, sync your schedules and do all of that. And then I guess we would just ask that liaisons please share with your commissions that information is being requested to better inform our subcommittee members on, how to update this thing.
Indeed.
All right. Councilmember Sweet.
Will we have, is there a staff liaison that'll be serving on this committee with 3 council people?
Clerk.
Okay,
Clerk
good.
Boudreaux.
Great, perfect.
I was
Wanted
going
to
to volunteer.
confirm.
This is all you. This is
all me.
all you. All
Thank you.
right. Is there further discussion on the process and procedure related to boards and commissions? Because this is just one portion, actually. That statement there could be many a thing. The actual label of
Wow.
the discussion, it says process and procedure related to boards and commissions. Anything else? All right.
Expand the scope of the committee.
No. All right, seeing
And the
nothing.
members?
Then we'll, no. We will close that discussion and move on to our discussion regarding short-term rentals.
Short-term rentals in like reference like Airbnbs and stuff like that, correct?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is there someone who added this to the agenda who wanted to start the discussion?
That would be me.
Councilmember Simmons.
Yeah, so short-term rentals are like Airbnb, Verbal. I mean, I don't know. There's probably lots of different ones. And so this is kind of has been in the ether for a while. I've had different folks kind of bring this forward at different times. And even recently, when I was in the midst of being yelled at by one of our landlords inappropriately, they also brought it up too. And I was like, well, I'm a perfectly reasonable person. So even though people treat me poorly, I can still take things and try to make some action out of them. And so, so that was part of this, bringing this forward now, as well as thinking about, so wanting to have a conversation and start thinking about, a few different housing related policies as we've been starting to have conversations around a lot of things around housing. And so I thought this would be an easier one to start with than some others. And the things I included that not meant to be like exhaustive of all of the things to think about, but I included the what Ann Arbor passed, although I have, you know, there's some things that I'm not as tied to as what they have in theirs. The one that's drafted from Detroit, just so we can kind of see some different language and some different ways that people were trying to address these kinds of policies. And then I also included an article, which is in some ways a little bit of a counter point to this, or trying to expand out and thinking about some of the reasons why municipalities might be considering these kinds of policies, as well as thinking about you know, whether we're going for an outright ban versus regulation. And there's a couple of things just in terms of, you know, I was having some questions about whether, you know, do we know, as an example, how many short-term rentals we have in the city?
I had community services do some research on that. There's approximately 43 operating units. 9 are located in the Thompson block. 19 could not be identified per location. And then there's 15 are in various locations throughout the city. The majority of these are in core neighborhood and center.
What was it? 40, what was it?
43, and that's approximate.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be like all of it. But then how is that tracked? Is it like that do they have to file something specifically with the city to run it, or is it more from like observation of looking at what's being posted?
We don't currently have a registration process,
Mhm.
so it's just largely done through zoning and building qualifications.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Because I was wondering, so that was one of the questions, was like, how many do we have? I'm not surprised to hear that there's like 9 in Thompson. I mean, that was one of the big things when it first, I mean, so that's one of the places where I heard about this was a big issue, obviously, Thompson block being in Ward 3. And then I've also, you know, people have said like there's a lot of different ways that people are doing things. Apparently somebody was like, yeah, there's some landlords that have somebody who's allowing somebody to kind of rent multiple spaces that then they're using for Airbnb. So they kind of have a little side business of renting and then using those for Airbnb. And so that probably doesn't show up on here. Also one of the things I thought was interesting when looking at some of these different pieces in terms of regulation, you know, it becomes like something that, like with anything else, people have a fee to get to be approved to do this. So that's something that we could consider too. And then the other, well, you know, there's some other specific things I would say, but I also, you know, I wanted us to kind of talk about it, but then I'm very interested in actually having the Planning Commission to look into this more deeply. And in particular, because there's some intersections, I think, with some other things that I know the Planning Commission has been considering. So, and I just want to get clarity on this too, because I think around like ADU. So we currently do not have something that permits ADUs. We do. So yes.
Auxiliary dwelling units?
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, they're permitted in like 5 years old knowledge plus.
Yeah.
But they're permitted by right in CN and CN. I believe that were some amendments when in planner to in one in CNSF, don't quote me on
Mhm.
this, to allow accessory dwelling units in all of our one and CNSF, and then also
Mhm.
That's when Jones Chance was on city council. Wasn't that when that was brought forward? Oh, sorry. That's how I stack time, is who was here, who did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Who did it?
So, because I was thinking, I thought that we have had it, and then somebody was like, oh no, like we don't really allow, and so maybe it's just like funky when people get into details. But anyway, so that's great if we do. And so that was one of the things where I see like possible difference between like maybe here in Ann Arbor, because in their ordinance, they specifically say that ADUs cannot be used. And I'm not sure that would make sense here, as it's increasing density and also possibly creating a way for people to age in place and different things like that. So anyhow.
I think the big deal with ADUs was.
Councilmember McLean? I don't know what's happening.
They want you to come to the mic.
Oh, I don't know what's happening there, but Councilmember McLean.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's a good discussion as well. And one that I've been interested in thinking about is, I'm curious from a legal standpoint, if we know if there are any restrictions on some of the policy tools that we might consider. So for example, would there be anything that would prohibit us from putting a cap on the number citywide, sort of the way we did with marijuana dispensaries?
No, not the way we did that. A different way.
Different way.
So I'm curious about that. I'm curious whether we could create a floor for the number of days that was rented, for example. So where we might not find it attractive to be able to rent it for 1 or 2 or 3 days, but we might say something 15 days or 30 days could be considered. Anything that we would prohibit us from licensing these and or bonding them, requiring them to have a bond. There are potential parking implications here as well, and restricting potentially whether or not, I don't know how you would exactly do this, but maybe may have to have some kind of residence permitting that we have in some parts of the city already, but I don't know if overnight parking for non-residents and renters would be allowed, or require that if anybody has this as a rental, that they have to have an off-street parking space with it. Most being equal, I don't generally like to require extra parking, but so these are all just questions, and I'm wondering if kind of the range of policy options that we have are in any way precluded, for example, by state law, that keep us from doing anything.
I can't speak specific to that, but I know the past couple of years, the state legislature has been discussing preemption on these things. So I know how we love preemption.
What a time.
Of course they are. Of course they are. State knows best.
Further discussion?
So a couple of years ago, when MML had the conference in Muskegon, this was a whole session, and they had realtors come in. They had other folks come in, so they're presenting both sides of potential banning. In that community where they had somebody come in, there was a realtor that came in, and she was just expressing that this was the economic boom that her community had long needed. And I talked to a couple other people from that community. They're like, yeah, basically they're buying up all these houses, and people who live here are displaced, and they had to move to the surrounding areas, and we're having problems finding houses. So, it's a give and take. Some of these folks were reconditioning homes that couldn't be rented, and they bought them cheap, and they did that fully realizing that they were going to make their money's worth out of doing that. And in that sense, it was good. But the counter argument that there were a lot of people that were displaced. So just in that context, and that was a community that was very close to Lake Michigan. So they were dealing with lots of people coming up from Chicago and renting those places and doing that. I don't know how Ypsilanti fits into that. You know, I'm getting the impression that Ypsilanti is more of a destination city than I had ever thought it was. From recent comments from people, and certainly people from the Thompson block. I'm happy to have this here, and thanks for the information that you provided. This was something that Annie Somerville and I had talked about when she was on council, but I think this really needs to be addressed before we go too much farther. So.
Thank you. Councilmember McLean?
One other comment along those same lines. So I know of, I think, two in my general vicinity in Normal Park, and just thinking about how it changes the dynamics of a block, I can imagine it's not a big change for one, but if there were two or three on the same block, suddenly the neighborhood is completely changed. Probably not for the better. I also have a bit of worry that, you know, do the weekend U of M football out-of-towners discover a market here sometime, and we wind up having places rented as part of what's behind places that have created that floor on the number of days that you can rent, that you have to at least rent it for 7 or 15. They're worried about people that come into town, party, tear up the place, raise hell, and then go and then leave.
Councilmember Simmons?
Yeah, well, I have a question, but first I just want to say, like, you know, I was, you know, I have a person, like, I think about like how Airbnb started way back when, and how, you know, it's been used in lots of ways, and how it's, you know, it's grown over time, and, you know, as opposed to being like a room in someone's house, or, you know, somebody has a property and then they're kind of renting that out as extra income, it's becoming, you know, more of like complete spaces that are held just for that use. And so I mean, I think that that's, you know, really what my concern is, not so much about there being opportunities for short-term rental. And, you know, I was able to make Ypsilanti my home because of being able to have the opportunity to move into a short-term rental when I didn't have housing. So anyway, just to put that out there, like kind of have a personal interest in that in terms of thinking about how it can be used. And I'm interested in the ways it can be used for community members in terms of thinking about, you know, different kinds of incentives for, you know, ways to kind of move this back to maybe its more original usage and away from taking away housing stock writ large. And so, you know, I'm interested in kind of thinking about some of those, how to do some of that. And then if there's ways of tying it to ways that we can be increasing density, you know, and whether that's a conversation of, you know, why not R1, or, and so maybe that was what I was hearing. Maybe was the piece that I was hearing about specifically, was that it's not allowed in residential, which is the area where we need to be increasing density. So, yeah, so I guess in terms of how we want to do this, you know, if it's something that we could send to the planning commission and then know that it'll come back before us and we can have some time to do some more looking into things and things of that sort. If that seems to be the next best steps, then do we have to vote on that to have it go to a commission?
Not necessarily.
I could take it to him. I'm the liaison. I can say, but it would be good to have exactly what you want them to deliberate on. Given the comical EMB back and forth with the planning commission, I think they would like to have clear instructions as to what they're reviewing it for.
So maybe kind of thinking about like, well, questions I would have would be one, in some of the materials, it talks about just like understanding some of the conditions that we have. So that information that you shared earlier in terms of how many we know we have and where and things like that. The difference between a ban and regulation and some of the things that we might want to include in order to regulate them, so we don't have them kind of take over neighborhoods or buildings, apartment buildings. Would be good. And yeah, the question of how this can connect back with ADUs and re-looking at the residential piece for that, I would also be interested in. Yeah, there might be some other things, but I don't know. Kind of, would it be best just to have kind of a list of questions, is it like kind of having a list
Yeah, I
of
think that would be
questions for
helpful
them?
if people, rest of council forwarded questions to me, I can do that, or.
You could possibly, not to try to form another ad hoc committee, but you could do a council planning commission, have a few nominations from each body, so kind of work through it together.
Mhm. Councilmember Clayton, your hand is up.
Maybe I'm thinking along some of the same lines, but certainly want to underscore President Pro Tem's thoughts on being very clear to anybody that we would refer this to. And it occurs to me that we have another meeting a week from now. If we were going to communicate something, we could potentially take this week, whether we refer it to the planning commission or whether we send it to a joint committee of planning and this body. Whatever it is, we could come up with our list of questions, all of us, over the course of the next week, and try to compile them, whether it's city manager or mayor pro tem. I call him the president pro tem. Sorry.
Sweet.
I had a question for probably best directed towards Councilmember Simmons, maybe. By chance, did you have an opportunity to speak with any staff or council members from Ann Arbor or Detroit about how these have worked for them at all? I'm just wondering. If not, that's okay. I just wanted to know if there's been any, like, they had any feedback.
No, and I mean, the one in Detroit, so, and I was like, that was one I was gonna follow up on, because when I was reading about it, it was like they had put it forward, but then a lot of people who run the short-term rentals, then said that they didn't like it. And so then they paused or something. So I was like that, so I wanted to follow back up on that. So that's why I just sent the draft, for the draft from there.
Wondering how they've been working in those two communities and what, if they could change something, what they would change.
Yeah, so that maybe could be some conversation.
Okay.
Too.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Mayor Pro Tem or not? Or are folks comfortable doing that? I don't know if I missed something in between there. So
No, so the planning commission doesn't meet for a while. So we have our next meeting, and then planning commission won't meet till after that. So we can bring this back up at our next meeting with any questions, and then I can forward that and have a conversation with Josh about getting it on the agenda.
Further discussion then?
So then our action is that we will basically kind of have a holder in our next meeting for this so that we can bring back some clarifying questions of what we would want to consider with a policy around short-term rentals.
No, I'll make sure staff is prepared to provide feedback and do some research on other communities that had went through this process.
Thank you.
I don't have the next planning commission on my, do you have that in your?
Because then I have.
It's the third Wednesday of the month.
That's what I thought, but it was the fourth Wednesday this past month, so. It'd be the 18th.
To clarify, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, do you want?
Oh, there it is. It's the 18th.
Us to share these questions with you sometime before the next meeting?
Or by the
Did
next
you
meeting.
have them, or bring them to the next meeting, or what's?
Or is fine with me.
Whatever you want before.
You're
next
very
week.
flexible.
Either or by next Tuesday, right?
Yep.
All right, awesome sauce. Anything further before we move on? All right, thank you. We'll close this discussion. We're at liaison reports, Police Advisory Commission.
Yeah, so we met we met last Thursday. And in that meeting, a subcommittee was organized. I'm sorry, but the individuals on this subcommittee, even though there's only this individuals on the subcommittee, their names are escaping me right now. I'm sorry, but the subcommittee was formed to help figure out the logistics for the joint event between YPAC and HRC, being that the one that was supposed to happen on the 21st was canceled. So the one that's going to be happening in September, they're trying to work out the logistics for that. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. Human Relations Commission.
I just have a few things. One is the letter that is in our packet. HRC voted to bring this forward to council because they support drug tracking and they feel like drug tracking services are life-saving resources that this community needs. So I just wanted to mention that. I don't know if everybody had an opportunity to read the letter. Corn did come to HRC and provide a presentation. And after that presentation, it was discussed. And HRC again decided to write a letter of support to council. The other thing, HRC is working on continuing the fair chance resolution, rewording it, and that should be prepared probably after the next meeting, which the next meeting is September the 19th at 6 o'clock. And lastly, HRC also, they did vote and they made a motion and voted for the release of body cam regarding the incident that happened on early morning of August the 6th. And it is going to also be on the HRC agenda so we can have further discussion about it. But at the same time, it was a resolution that was, it wasn't a resolution, it was just a voice vote that was brought forward because some of the people in the audience came and spoke about an incident that happened. I think Corn spoke about it earlier, saying someone in Depot Town, I believe it was Depot Town or on Cross Street, someone, it was a self-inflicted wound and they just want to release the body cam.
Investigation still going on for that, and a border commission nor council could just request body cam. You would have to FOIA that.
I just wanted to, there was a comment made earlier that there were no other witnesses besides police officers, and that's just not true.
There were.
Oh, yeah.
And I know one, so.
Okay.
I also just want to clarify, I heard something about me being present for this event. I was not. Just for the record, I was not there. So I've heard that more than once now that the mayor was at the scene of this shooting and I was not.
So I don't have any details.
Oh, I'm just saying that for the
I-
record. Yeah, I was not there.
I just want to put it out. I don't have any details other than what was stated in public comment. And again, it was brought to the HRC and they wanted to move on it. And so, Andrew, you're stating that this is something the HRC cannot.
You cannot request this. This is also being investigated by the Washtenaw County Sheriffs. So it's under active investigation. So it wouldn't even be released in FOIA. If it were to be requested in FOIA, it would be largely redacted because that's not something they share with people.
Okay.
But in general,
good FOIA.
But yeah, body camera coverage would need to be FOIA. Yes. Mr. Barr, you were going to say something?
Yes, there's multiple layers to this question. The deputy city clerk has asked me to prepare a workshop for the boards and commissions. And one of the issues is whether or not the board and commission has the authority to do what they want to do. And the city charter is very, very clear that boards and commissions have no authority to do any city function. And so I'll have it more fleshed out when I have the presentation. But as the city manager has indicated, city council members individually don't have the right to go ask the police department to do anything, get any information, except as a citizen, they can FOIA it. And pretty much that's the same situation with boards and commissions.
Oh, city clerk, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I may just, because this brings up a boards and commissions issue in general. If any board or commission that you as council members sit as liaisons on wants to request something, it should be in the form of an actual resolution voted on and written to be, presented to council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything additional for HRC?
I think that was it, other than, again, just making sure council is aware of the note that was in the packet. Again, that was something that was voted on. And again, I just want to make sure I'm clarifying what was stated earlier. And that is just, this conversation was brought to HRC from public comment. And they did make a vote saying, hey, we want to release it. But we know that was just something that was said, and it was then said that it would be on the agenda. And so now that Andrew has stated that's something that HRC cannot deal with, I will definitely speak to the HRC commission and let them know.
All right, thank you. Parks and Arts Commission.
They met last week. They've completed a complete tour of the city park system and brought back some of the things that good, bad, and things need to be addressed. Part of this is for the city master plan, Parks and Recreation master plan update. Then there's some other things that can be hopefully worked on or addressed in the very near future. And then they're also continuing to work on planning for Fall River Day. That will be Sunday, September 29th in Frog Island Park. The Huron River Watershed Council has secured funding from a funder to offer free kayak trips this year. So those will be free and no cost, which is great. This is the second time we've been able to do this. The first time was through a MParks grant that the city received, and this will be the second opportunity for us to do that through another funder. So looking forward to that. I've been working closely with HRWC staff, the commission, and then staff members, Director Wessler, and then Tom, communications manager, in regards to some logistics and other communications from the city's end. So yeah, we're looking forward to a good day for that. So that's what we got going on.
Did you say the date was?
September 29th. It's a Sunday from 12 to 3.
Thank you. Sustainability Commission.
Yes. So Sustainability Commission, we last met. There was intro new commissioners, but then also nominations and elections, as the past chair, Beth Gibbons, had to step down from being chair due to her new position with the county, doing resilience work, which is really exciting. But she's able to maintain her role on the commission. So we now have a new chair and well, the vice chair is the same, but new chair, Paula Sizemore. We also spent a fair amount of time talking about the Resiliency Hub Network project. And so ICPJ was had some funding to host some community conversations. And so we have now completed 2 of 3 of those. And the final session will be co-hosted with the Sustainability Commission. Specifically, it will be on Monday, September 16th at 16 South Washington at the Growing Hope space. I was just able to confirm that today. And so we'll be putting that up and around. The sessions have been really great and well attended, and some really good things coming out of that, and that we think will really help both lay some foundation work for ongoing conversations and work that is happening in the city, as well as helping to further some things that the Sustainability Commission has been working on and wanting to do more work on, in particular with creating a community resource guide, which is something that we actually had some students from the University of Michigan who talked about and worked through a few years ago. And so we're excited about kind of seeing some of this movement happening. And then the other thing that just that they wanted me to bring forward was just things I already mentioned about trying to get things together for Earth Day and some of the hard time they have had securing space, that, you know, securing space that has the qualities that are necessary for the event to go off well. And so right now they're still trying to figure some of that out.
Thank you. Planning Commission.
Planning Commission met last week. There were 3 main items of business on the agenda. One was a public hearing for the electronic message board size requirements. They deliberated on that and will be forwarding that back to us with some clarifications. So we should expect that. The other thing was a public hearing for a PUD for high scope adaptive reuse of the church that is adjacent. So High Scope owns a block of properties next to the main building, and they've got a couple small houses, and the property behind is all open. And some of the biggest issues are so reusing that church, the amount of parking that's there in all the adjacent places, and how some of the requirements are only met if you consider the entire conglomerate parcels. And so there was some conversation about that, but basically they approved the PUD with stipulations, and that should be coming to us as well. So and then the other thing was the community benefits ordinance, which they discussed, and they were to get it. Josh was going to get comments from individual members of the commission by today. So I don't think we set a hard deadline for when we wanted those back, but they weren't going to have a collective comment, but they would submit individual comments. And that's it.
Can we have a motion to extend, please?
Moved.
Till when? We didn't say.
Until 10:30.
Support. So moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Sorry, I skipped HDC. HDC.
Thank you, Mayor. Historic District Commission met 2 weeks ago, and several of it was sort of signage night at the HDC. 207 West Michigan Ave, 317 West Cross, and 10 North Washington, all were signage issues and requests. The West Cross one, you may recognize that address as what I still call the Ugly Mug, but I know it's changed names several times since then. And 10 North Washington is a new ice cream shop that will replace Go Ice Cream.
Thank you. ZBA.
I was not notified of the eventual meeting. It was scheduled and canceled. And I didn't get the last scheduling, so.
SEMCOG.
No update at this time.
Tenant meet.
Urban County, I don't have an update. BDA, we don't have a meeting until next month. Friends of Rutherford Pool.
Friends of Rutherford Pool, the pool hosted a national night out a couple weeks ago, and that was a great success with various council members attending. It's a nice night for folks from Ypsi Housing Commission housing to enjoy the pool. City manager was there with his family. It's great. They have bounce house, they have food, they have I think it's orchestrated to have an interface between police and the community. And that was certainly the case. The fire department showed up. So there was engagement there, but it was a good event. It was very nice. So. And they will be, so this is the last week for Rutherford Pool. They will be closing this weekend.
Yeah.
We get out. I think it's Sunday or Monday.
Monday.
Oh, Labor Day? Yeah. All right, thank you. Council proposed business, Councilmember King.
So I just have two things. One, I just want to say I had an amazing time attending several events as we were on break. Several events, I can't even name them all, but I just really enjoyed each one. Also, I just want to bring up Heritage Park Association, Heritage Park Neighborhood Association. They meet every second Saturday of the month at 10 o'clock. And they are actually requesting Chief Moore be in attendance. They did reach out to him and they just want him to come and be in the group because this is a neighborhood association that has always had police come to the group. And, you know, they always had a police presence and they are just requesting that he comes and meet all the members. And even if he can't come on a monthly basis, if he sends someone.
Thank you.
Oh, I need to also say, I just looked that down. This next meeting on September the 14th, they are going to meet at 10 a.m., but they will be pulling weeds in Park Ridge. So they will not be in Park Ridge. They will be pulling weeds, but the next meeting after that is on October the 12th, again at 10 a.m.
Thank you. Councilmember Simmons.
Yes. So a few things, not in any particular order. One, I had some residents reach out to me with concern about the news that they saw that radioactive waste from the atomic bomb is being disposed just in Van Buren Township, so very close to us, and just kind of noting different things that have either come or have been slated to come to Michigan, into areas close to us. And just thinking about, I think, transport considerations, and if this is really the business we want to be in. And so sharing that. Also, I was able to participate in an event that was at Riverside Arts Center that one of my residents, actually, well, the two artists and residents there both were 3 residents, so that's fun. But one of them hosted an event called Alternative Public Comment. And so it was a collaging. So if anybody wants to see my brilliance, it is on display here. But I wanted to just share this. It was a fun thing. And Avery Williamson, who's the artist, has been doing a lot of research into the archives, and so doing some deep work, and then pulled out images and stories. And so then this was all on the table. So then for all the folks that were there, they were able to kind of ask questions about these different images. And she was sharing some of the history and purpose and like what mattered at that time. And then people were able to put it together in these different ways. And so I look forward, I know she took some pictures of everybody's different collages. It was really interesting to see some of the things that people were pulling out in terms of vision for the city or different things like that. And we got to really get into a lot of the history of protest here in the city and activism for different things. Like so that was really interesting. And so and also it was really cool because there were things, Water Street just keeps Water Streeting, y'all. Like there was things from like community sessions talking about the pros, the cons, and all of that. So I have some of that on here too, because it's still going. And so that was a fun event and activity, just to think about different ways for people to share their public comment. I also attended, I went and hung out at Fresh Start Clubhouse, which I didn't know about that location, but I learned about Fresh Start Clubhouse. They are a space, they do support for folks with mental health issues, and really creating a space for folks to hang out and to do work, to kind of be able to create a routine and things like that. And it shares a space in the what used to be New Beginnings. So I didn't know that they were right back there, but that's where they are. And so we just were talking about different ways to connect and ways to make sure that we are thinking about those needs and voices, as a lot of the issues that they talked about, we've been talking about, like around housing, access, and things like that. And then I have some other things. So I'll probably, I've had a lot of folks bringing things forward around rats. So not only about there are rats, which, I had a little friend in my backyard, but hopefully my neighbor's cat got to them, but we'll see. So not only that are rats, but then there was actually a big, the biggest thing that was spreading for a while was actually around concern that people were putting out poison, and maybe that the city was putting out poison for the rats that then squirrels were getting to. And so I was able to confirm that the city did not do that. But I do think that there's an overall conversation, which really is about waste management. And so that's something that I've been reading a lot about rats and what municipalities do, and also what the issues are and how to address them. And a little foreshadowing, y'all, because I will not stop talking about compost. Because really it's about food waste, and really meat food waste in our waste stream and improperly stored. So that was a big deal happening. And there's been the housing sessions for Dorsey Estates, as those are for sale, and have been trying to help support folks, the Ypsi first preference for that. And so they've been doing these sessions. So I know some people have been attending those. And the last thing I'll say is free Palestine. Thank you.
Little thing, one for Director Westler. Folks in College Heights are looking to get new nets for the tennis courts. So we could have a conversation about how we go about doing that. The one that's there is dilapidated, so I'll contact you about that. Did some weed whacking on the courts. Mowers haven't gotten through there and done that, so I went out and did that. Last night went to Growing Hope with a number of other people for a conversation about Fed Up Ministries and Growing Hope and the work that they've been doing and the issues that have been they've been seeing. There were conversations about things that they had the ability to control and things that they didn't have the ability to control. And so I know there was a conversation earlier in the week, last week, between the city manager and the police chief and the mayor, and some of those folks. But it's the same issues that we've had for quite some time in terms of, this corridor of Washington, with folks congregating and, the other activities that are going there. So, I'd like to have more conversations about that. We'll have follow-up conversations with Pastor Hannah and various other folks. But it would be nice to have the information that came from the meeting with the chief. And I need to, I've been tried to schedule a meeting with the chief, but we were both sick last week, so that didn't happen. So I will follow up on that and then bring that back for discussion probably next week.
I just want to say that meeting last week, the chief would probably have the least to tell you about the meeting because he spoke barely. It was really, they asked for that meeting with the Ward 1 representatives, the city manager, myself, and the chief, and then they brought advocates and their representatives, and I probably did more talking than anyone on our side of things. And so, I mean, he can give you his kind of couple of things he's shared, but more of the conversation was around what's been happening. Well, it was supposed to be around what's been happening. What are options of things to do to try to mitigate the issues that are happening over there. And I feel like the conversation went a little bit more into lots of other things and not necessarily the reason that it was called, but out of it came some conversation about the lack of collaboration amongst organizations and looking for more of that, the potential of putting up a fence, all these things that came up in the meeting last night again, and also a request for an increased presence of the police, especially during times when programming is not being implemented. I don't know if that was shared in the meeting yesterday because I did arrive late, but I have also already received calls and texts about seeing an increase in police presence. Well, that was requested. And so I don't know if that was shared or not, but it needs to be, because we're not simply just making the decision. It was a joint communication that would happen. And permission was granted to do that. So yeah. So again, I mean, scheduling a meeting with him, absolutely. But in terms of that meeting, it wasn't a meeting. It wasn't the chief and Growing Hope or their.
No, I just,
ours. Yeah.
I know he has a role to play in that.
Yeah.
I have other issues I need to talk about.
Absolutely.
But that's it.
Yeah. Member Sweet.
I'm done. Okay. I wanted to take just an opportunity well, it's been a long time since we've had public.
Yeah, man.
But an opportunity to thank all the staff, and especially the clerk's office and the clerk and her team for a successful running of the August primary election. Elections are no easy feat, especially with what changes have come up in the state of Michigan. As someone who's served on an absentee count board in another community, I know the robust and technical and detailed, time-consuming process, right, that is to do. So thank you to all the staff that participated in that to pull that off, and to do it accurately, well, and efficiently. So great job. That's it.
All right. Councilman McLean?
Mayor, might as well pick up right where Councilman Sweet left off. I also wanted to thank Tracy and other staff who ran the election. And I agree with all of Councilman Sweet's comments, but I think it's worth underscoring. Secondly, we alluded to this a little bit and talked about it in an earlier part of this meeting, but mentioned being at the senior center for some discussion about possible capital improvements. And given the discussion about structure, I'm not sure who to address this to, but I would like to make sure that we have more public input into the needs, wants, desires of the community. And sometimes people think about that senior center as something that just belongs somehow to a normal park, but it doesn't. It's for the whole community. And so I think it's all well and good to have some good and sincere efforts to get input by having a few meetings at the senior center. But I think there needs to be some effort to go outside and get around to all parts of the community to get that kind of input, because they were interested in knowing not just what can we do with the small pot of money that they have now, but to kind of think about the future as well. So I think that's worth doing. I think I'll stop there.
Councilmember Tuesday?
Yeah, so within this this little break that we had, I got a chance to experience a lot of community events, which really heightened my sense of community by way of the Summerfest this past weekend, Peacenik and the parking lot of Ypsi High, the Ypsi Stand-Up Field Day event where we had ponies and goats and all types of other farm animals, allegedly. And it was just great. Being able to see all the youth from either Ypsi City, Ypsi Township, and all the other surrounding municipalities come together and have fun in all of these events and spend time in the community, and to see all the organizations and other businesses just come into these events and just help and just show love. It was just amazing. So I want to see more of that, and I'm sure I will see more of that. So I'm looking forward to it. And that's really all that I got.
Thank you. All right. I'll echo all those things. I got to attend a bunch of stuff over this break, and I agree. I mean, really robust events and like large participation within the community. It was really, really nice this summer to have like every weekend there was something either back to back or, something in the community to do. I also want to thank the clerk department for the, running that election so smoothly. That is a lot of work. And then also for you specifically, Tracy, being new and ramping up and also having to focus on a primary. It's a lot of work. So kudos to you and your team and your staff and all the volunteers who support with that. The other piece is, right before we came in, for this meeting, we had a little bit of a stormy storm outside, and I want to really thank our first responders, our fire, police, and DPS staff. There were power lines down, trees have fallen. On my tree fell on my house, y'all. So we're gonna see what it looks like when I get there tonight. Right before the meeting. And so thank you all, our chiefs, for being with staff and out in community and fielding all of these things that happened really quickly. That was pretty scary, how fast that happened. And then in a blink, I was getting texts and pictures sent and things that had happened all across the city, and beyond the city, clearly. So again, in moments like this, where we have to still, make our way into City Hall and do the work of the people, our staff and employees are out there supporting and helping people. And so I'm very grateful for everybody's work today. Honestly, the tree really threw me off today. So the things that I was prepared to talk about, I don't even know, because I'm kind of banking on seeing what my house looks like when I get there. But okay. All right. Thank you. So that's it for me, but thank you.
I'll go quick. I'd also like to thank the clerk department for their work on the primary. I got to act as an election inspector and it was fun being on the other side of it. Lot less stress. I did place at all of council's spots of the dais a memo about triggering of the CBO. We'll be bringing this to the next meeting more, but it is the purchase of 326 East Michigan. And it is for, what is this for? It's for the Youth Arts Alliance. It's the purchase of city property, so it would trigger that. The incentive would be about $13,000. The land value is 18,000. And we're requesting a purchase price of 5,000. So it's a very nominal thing, and they need to get construction. I believe construction needs to be finished by June. And they received like a $700,000 grant. So council should look over this information and then determine if they want to proceed with the CBO, and we'll have that at the next meeting. We will be changing the events policy to prohibit amplified sound prior to noon. This can be done administratively and would not require to go to council. But that's just based off some comments we received about loud amplified sound in the early mornings. I've already forwarded the fact that we bid out for legal services. This is going to appear on the next agenda. We'll be providing the 3 top bids and what our staff's recommendation will be. I'm going to give that to you, send it out tomorrow, so you have ample time to review that. In addition to that, we'll be bringing an LOA to council next week from the IAFF. Their contract doesn't expire till 2027, but there is a situation in the way the contract is written that inadvertently penalizes individuals that get pregnant. So they are going to rectify that. And so that will be on the next one. And then, as I have mentioned in an email, Mr. Barr, after 43 years or so, will be stepping down as our city attorney at the end of this year. And I just want to tell him how much I've learned from him in the past decade. And I know he's given a lot to the city, and I think the city owes him a lot.
We absolutely do, Mr. Barr. You're wonderful. And I have the rest of the year to tell you every day. So I won't even go into it now, but we are so grateful for your service. And I don't know anyone who has been more committed to this city in an official capacity than you. So thank you so much. Oh, we did find stuff from you in the time capsule. I mean, come on. Anywho, yeah. So anywho, so thank you. This is our second opportunity for public comment. If anyone in the audience would like to address council, please raise your hand. Please come, Pastor Jackson.
Once again, it was a pleasure to be here. This is my first time sitting through city council, and
You're
amen.
smiling. That's good.
How you doing?
I don't know if all of your meetings are like this, but this is wonderful. I learned so much. And it's just been exciting to get more involved within the community. I just wanted to just make a point to say I was one of the individuals on the Human Relations Commission to not necessarily vote for the testing, not because I don't want that, but I just wanted more information, and I was scheduled to meet with a couple individuals regarding that, just to have a more balanced perspective on such a sensitive issue. And I also just wanted to communicate that we are, meaning myself and a number of other organizations have been working tirelessly to build relationship with our community. And we got a chance to participate, or actually it was our organization that helped to do the Peacenik event, and just wanting to build bridges within our community as well. And so the last thing I will say about that, we have been targeting some of the hotspots as I'm working with the community violence intervention team and working with the sheriff's office to affect change in those areas. The hotspots are the high crime, high violence areas of our community, and trying to and investing within those environments for community violence intervention. And so we are continuing to do that. And I think this will be my last thing to say. Also, I just wanted to say that I think I would love to develop or figure out a way to have a more comprehensive approach when it comes to developing to hearing different proposals for the community. Specifically, I'm thinking about my role on the Human Relations Commission. And I know that, you know, sometimes there's a lot of passion with these projects, and there's a lot of ways of presenting information. And I've at least been in this long enough, maybe not in your position, but to know that there are pros and cons to everything and a lot of different perspectives, and the necessity to be open to those other ideas, I think is really critical, to be data driven and to have comprehensive processes to be able to come to powerful conclusions that we can then maybe present. And so I just want to voice my commitment to working on that. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address council? Please go. Yes, please.
Deron Witherspoon Senior. I had to go take a client somewhere earlier, so I just got to left. I just want to thank you guys for your time and hearing me out. And I also wanted to know who I can talk to directly, because me and Mr. Jackson here is working on a power stroll event. We want to take down, like stuff like today, we want to take down like 5 square miles on foot, like a search and rescue type thing, and just pick up debris from the community. So we would like a list from you guys where y'all most want that needed from first. Hopefully I can coordinate with somebody here directly. I'm young, I'm new to this type of life. I've been on the other side of that, so now I'm trying to come on this side and basically bridge the gap for the less fortunate.
I can give you my card after this and we can get in touch.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to council? Anyone on Zoom?
I have several on Zoom. Ashley, would you like to speak?
Good evening.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Cool. This is Ashley Shukite, who's the co-director of Leaf Harm Reduction, a public health contractor with SOAR, a prevention agency, and a subject matter expert with the University of Michigan Opioid Prevention Education Network and with Research Triangle Institute. I am a person who was a young person who used harm reduction services in Ypsilanti and in recovery, and identify as a person who uses drugs. I apologize for not being there tonight in person, but I have been on Zoom with my hand up since Corin was presenting and wanted to address a few questions for you all. Partnerships with various community partners include SOAR, Michigan Open, and many other groups that provide services, including prevention on all levels, primary, secondary, and tertiary. Drug education prevention, such as safety first and life skills, have been and are implemented with SOAR and other locations throughout Southeast Michigan. Anytime a connection, a service, or case management prevention is at the forefront, this could be prevention education on additional polysubstance use, safe storage, especially near children, prevention as it relates to overdose, infectious disease, and substance use management and treatment. In terms of non-coercive treatment, strong suggestions imply that treatment programs are also providing best evidence, including medications for substance use disorders that have been up to date with the changing drug supply over the last decade. They have not. Extensive metadata analysis has demonstrated that no treatment as is has the standards to equate to what we need due to the changing drug market. In a recent study published from the Yale School of Public Health, a expert professor of epidemiology, Robert Heimer, has quoted saying, however, non-medication based treatments increase the risk of death compared to no treatment by over 77%. He goes on and says, there are plenty of studies that show medication-based treatment is better than abstinence-based treatment. Now we can also say that patients are no better off getting abstinence-based treatment compared to no treatment at all. End quote. This goes to say that treatment programs need to be updated, that are being worked on at various levels, and that drug checking services would provide valuable information to not only individuals using these substances, but to the broader treatment and healthcare providers to update their protocols to align with the current drug supply. If treatment is of the major concern,
I'm
then
sorry, your time's up.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Who's next?
Corn.
Good evening again.
Good evening again. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I wanted to say thank you to Ashley, who waited through that entire meeting on Zoom. She actually was supposed to be available to answer questions too during the presentation, and I don't think that it got communicated that she had her hand up. So that's my apologies. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Washington Street meeting and the preceding one that was brought up later in the meeting today. I do think that I appreciate your candor, Mayor Brown, in saying that, you know, police presence was requested by the individuals that called that meeting. I do think that those individuals felt like there was no other option. And I think that the reason they felt like there was no other option directly relates to there not being a unarmed crisis response program active in Ypsilanti. And that's something that, you know, care-based safety has been trying to get off the ground here for a while. They came to the city asking for funding, and that did not go through. And, you know, per some conversations that have been had, it looks like an avenue to fund that for the city would be through support from the county. And so an ask from care-based safety would be that city council put together a resolution asking the county to fund a unarmed crisis response effort in the city of Ypsilanti due to increased need. And so if that's something that council would be willing to consider, I think that would make a big difference and actually start to address some of these issues that more policing isn't gonna solve. And again, I appreciate you guys' time with the presentation today.
Thank you.
And we have one more. Well, maybe there'll be two. Kat is next.
All right. Good evening again.
Good evening, Kat Layton, Ward 3 resident and also Chair of the Human Relations Commission. I just also wanted to say that there was a conversation about the yesterday's Fed Up and Growing Hope conversation and meeting for community solutions. I was also present, and I agree with, you know, Councilmember McLean. It's incredibly important to have community input for issues plaguing our community and the visible societal impacts of it all. However, I'm noticing a trend that it's maybe not the community you necessarily want input from. And this history of voting and amongst you being in council, along with some other of your peers, kind of shows that. And so at that meeting, people are requesting police because again, like some other peers have in this public comment said, they're feeling exhausted by bearing the burden of our systemic failures, of our local elected officials' systemic failures from history upon history, time and time again. And this is a moment where we are able to fix that. And so an example of that is with if and so the public safety and mental health millage for Washtenaw County passes in November, the city of Ypsilanti has a really great opportunity to pass a resolution that says that this money that is received from the county, that is reimbursed from our tax-paying money, everyone who is speaking and who is a resident and a tax-paying resident in the city, including you, our elected officials, that our money goes towards things like harm reduction services or even an unarmed non-police crisis response. Like that is an example of putting this presence that you're showing in the community where you're saying you want to do something and then that is actually doing that. A lot of people, business owners and residents alike, they actually do want other options that is not police. But in this moment, the burden of solving our community issues has been placed on us, the people, when we need local official intervention with funding and resolution passing and ordinance changes. And so I ask that you consider passing some resolution to earmark the reimbursement money from the public safety mental health millage towards actual public safety and mental health issues rather than spending approximately $1.6 million on the variety of things that I tracked in line item budgets over a course of 7 years for the city. So thank you.
Thank you.
One more. Jennifer?
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Jen Heimberg here. I am your neighbor from Meadhurst Drive in 48198. It is late. I didn't have a statement prepared, so I won't keep us long. I just wanted to share with council my support of the harm reduction and safe use work being done locally by folks like Corin and Ashley. I follow their work. I trust their lived experiences, and I hope that council continues to work with experts like them, who are in the field, as well as the folks working with care-based safety, since all of these needs are not only increasing, but interconnected. So thank you so much for listening to the community members tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Just making sure.
That's everyone.
All right. Seeing it now, we'll close participation and the meeting is adjourned. Yeah. Oh yeah. Do you know? Oh, do you know?